papers to the IBC in May, Professor Wajakoya was turned away after he failed to meet all the electoral requirements. IBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati said Professor Wajakoya had failed to raise the required 2,000 signatures from at least 24 of the country's 47 counties. Wajakoya, 62 years of age, will be on the ballot alongside three other candidates, that is Raila Odinga of the Azimio la Umoja, William Ruto of the United Democratic Alliance UDA, and Agano Party flag bearer David Mwaure Wahiga. On May 5th, Professor Wajakoya unveiled Justina Wamboi Wamai as his presidential running mate.
What a person, what an illustrious background info there for Professor Wajakoya. But one interesting thing is that you can rise from somewhere to somewhere. You've heard the story that he was a street boy, a grave digger, he was a morgue attendant, he was a police officer, and now professor and ready to be the president. I don't know what you get from that Curia.
Maybe that's another example of, at the risk of sounding political, bottom up. I mean,
a quite neutral representation.
Exactly.
From where he's risen through the ranks to become an admirable lawyer, and probably even before he announced his bid to vie for presidency. You remember Professor Wajakoya in the corridors of justice, and in most cases he took up very controversial cases that no lawyer really would dare touch. But let's just look at his presidential bid, because it is very much important, relevant to this one. This idea of suspending the constitution, because I think he's really mentioned that about suspending the constitution and then the execution of the corrupt. Maybe only through the suspension of a constitution, Victor, then can you achieve the aspect of execution, because execution in Kenya as it is right now goes well against the regulations we have. So maybe probably through the suspension of a constitution, Wajakoya and Justina Wamai can achieve the execution of a corrupt, and you choose whether it's by hanging or a bullet.
By suspending the constitution, actually, that would give them that leeway, because it has to be a legislative process for you to, it's abolished, hanging and, the execution, as they put it, it's not allowed in the Kenyan constitution. So the only way to go about it is to suspend the constitution, or let the constitution as is, but go through the parliament. All right? But you see, that's a long process. So the only best way is to burn down the whole house, suspend the constitution. But is it that's possible, really?
Absolutely. But, Jane, 4 days of work. I'm sure this would be good news for people in Kenya with 4 days of work. But I'm not sure in a country that has problems like we do, what 4 days would do to a country that has always yearned to have a 24-hour economy, Jane.
That is one thing that is sort of a double-edged sword for most people, because one group are saying at least that keeps us, or gives us that competitive edge with the international space, where they're able to have 4 productive days, and their working force is also encouraged. They're in very good moods. They are upbeat. They are, ready to work, considering you're only working for 4 days, then you have a 3-day break. But on the flip side, again, as you put it, Curia, is our country ready for that? Considering we are part of the developing nations, can our economy even withstand that? But on the other hand, he was also saying this will be important for spiritual purposes. Given when he was at the Krishna Center, he actually rose through the ranks and became a priest. So he was saying, you rest on Friday, then on Friday is the day for Muslims to rest, on Saturday for the Seventh-day Adventist fraternity, and on Sunday for Christians. So Monday kikuja, you are all set to get started with the week.
He is a priest. All right.
And that wears many hats.
As we wait for this one, Victor, that controversial subject of repayment of debt, you know what I mean?
Yes.
The proposal by Wajakoya. Do you think, particularly the media, has been able to interrogate the proposal more, and how the public also ventilate on the proposal, to use cannabis as well as snakes and those other parts that he mentioned to end the debt problem in Kenya?
issue of economy is a big issue to tackle. Kwanza, the Kenya Kwanza said that they have an elaborate idea, for example, on how to tackle the economy. Azimio la Umoja as well said that they also have an elaborate idea on how to resuscitate the economy. Roots Party as well, led by Professor Wajakoya, you know, they have an idea on how to resuscitate this economy, as well as Waige Mwaure as well. But then, let's focus on Wajakoya. How is it going to be possible? How many hyenas do we have? At what point are we going to be, just an example, you said, have we done our due diligence as media to interrogate this issue critically and deeply, just to understand how it's going to be for us to have our debt, you know, resettled? But then the question, let me ask you as well, how many acres of cannabis will Kenya have to weed, plow, harvest, sell, and settle our debt?
I agree with you. Maybe probably the question of sustainability is one, and that is why I'm still coming back to the media, whether we've been able to interrogate this matter deeply, because there's the question of market demand, supply, and why, for example, the US has a bigger market as compared to other countries. There's the obvious question also of, you know, Colombia has coca, which is legal in terms of, you know, farming coca. How that country is faring in terms of economic stability, bearing in mind that coca fetches a lot of money. Of course, the cocaine, not the coca. Coca is the plant. Those are things we have not been able to interrogate. So in terms of acreage and how sustainable it is, we have not gotten the opportunity to do that. But of course, before we hand over to Jane for the Raila Amolo Odinga profile, there's a question of the differences that have emerged between Wajakoya and his running mate. Because it is very important as we head to this election. At some point, I think Wajakoya says he was misquoted, saying at a club in Kisumu that he supports Raila Odinga. Then the running mate comes the following day, Victor, and says, you know what, we have not discussed that as the Roots Party of Kenya. And if it comes to that point, then I will support the contrary. That doesn't really paint a picture of people walking the same path, does it?
Yeah, you know, first of all, look at the location where that statement was allegedly said, the area, and whether it was intentional or it was done, you know, at that heat of the moment and things were just happening pretty fast. But it really exposed some of the underbelly in that particular party. If one head is saying that the left hand is saying this and the right hand is saying the other one. So what is the point of convergence? And, you know, Wajakoya had to come out and clear the air and say that, you know, that was not the position. And by the way, at that particular point, there was some fear that it was going to bring a crack in that party with only a few days to go. How they have managed to arrest that situation is quite interesting, because since then, we've not had anything concerning that issue at all. But I beg your pardon, at this particular point, it's very, very important to have to note that anything that will be said between now until the election day, all the supporters will pick, and that will be either be detrimental or will be to the benefit of you as a candidate.
All right, let's head over to Jane for the Raila Amolo Odinga profile.
All right, and rightfully so, as you put it, Victor, these 48 hours that remain could be a make or break for any of the candidates. Now, speaking of the candidates, let's have a look at this man, Raila Amolo Odinga. Born in 1945, that makes him 77 years of age as of 2022 in Kisumu, that is in Nyanza. He went on to pursue his studies and graduated with a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Maddenberg University. And after graduating with his master's, he was able to become a lecturer at the University of Nairobi between the periods of 1970 through to 1974. Now, after moving from the University of Nairobi, he was able to join the Kenya Bureau of Standards, where he was the deputy director for a period of 4 years that lasted until 1978. Now, After exiting the bureau, he was now active in politics, and this led to him being arrested and jailed for treason for purportedly being part of the team that was planning the 1982 coup against the then president, the late Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. He was in prison for that period between 82 up to 88, and upon his release from prison in 1989, he found himself back incarcerated in 1990 in the company of Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia over the clamor for multi-party politics. Now, upon his release from that particular time he was incarcerated, he was able to flee the country and went to Norway. After fleeing to Norway, when he came back to Kenya, he was able to join elective politics after the reintroduction of multipartyism in Kenya. Now, when multipartyism was reintroduced in Kenya, he returned and joined the Forum for Restoration of Democracy Party and was elected as its Deputy Director of Elections in that same year, 1992. He went on to contest for the Member of Parliament for Langata in Nairobi and won the seat, a seat that he retained until 97, where he contested under the same, for the same seat rather, and was re-elected as the Member of Parliament for Langata. Now, in 1997, he unsuccessfully vied for presidency under the NDP ticket, that is the National Development Party, making this the first time that he, threw his hat in the race for presidency in Kenya. Moving forward to 2001, the National Development Party merged with KANU, which consequently led to him being appointed in the late President Toroitich Arap Moi's government, and he served in the capacity of Minister for Energy between 2001 through to 2002. And in 2002, he was able to work with the late Professor George Saitoti and Kalonzo Musyoka, and who had resigned from the Rainbow Movement. Now, looking at this Rainbow Movement, that was the time where Kibaki was also very active in politics, and the Rainbow Movement went on to merge with the National Alliance Party of Kenya, abbreviated as NARC, to form the National Rainbow Coalition, NARC, that endorsed Mwai Kibaki with the famous two words that brought a lot of peace and ensured peaceful transition of power from Moi to Mwai Kibaki, with the two words that were Kibaki Tosha. Now, under Kibaki's government, he went on to serve as Minister for Roads, Public Works and Housing, and that was between 2003 to 2005. And in 2005, there was the yes and no movement, and Raila was leading the no, also known as the orange vote, and won 57% against Kibaki's banana side that scored 43%. In 2005, he moved to officially form the party that has been in existence today, the Orange Democratic Movement, and in 2007 officially became the leader of ODM, where he also contested for the presidential seat, making that the second time that he went at it for presidency. Now, when you look back at this period between 2007-2008, it's one of the most sensitive political times in our country. There was a lot of chaos that ensued after the elections because Raila Odinga did lose to the late Mwai Kibaki, and he went on to contest the results, which led to a lot of the post-election violence. And this also brought the international community that negotiated the Grand Coalition government in 2008 when it was officially formed, and that is when Raila became the Prime Minister under the presidency of the late Mwai Kibaki. Now, he steered in 2010, fast forward to 2010, he was able to steer the promulgation of the Constitution with the yes vote in support of the new Constitution against William Ruto's side that was leading the no camp, and he was able to win by 68.55% against Ruto, who had a 31% vote. In 2013, he also vied for presidency, making this the fourth time that he attempted, the third time rather, that he attempted his run at presidency. And he was able to garner quite a huge chunk of the vote with a cumulative total of 5,340,546 votes. And this translated to about 43.70% of the total vote against President Uhuru Kenyatta, who had 50.51% of the vote. Now, he went and filed a petition at the Supreme Court citing massive failure of the BVR kits. However, the Supreme Court did dismiss this petition, and President Kenyatta was eventually sworn in as the president and has continued to serve until now. Now, moving forward to 2017, he was endorsed by the National Super Alliance, popularly known as NASA, to vie for presidency, with Kalonzo Musyoka having been his running mate during this particular time. And this time he also made that the fourth time that he contested for presidency, and again he did lose to President Kenyatta, who was seeking re-election. And then again he contested this particular election and took the matter to the Supreme Court, filed a case at the Supreme Court, and this consequently led to one of the historical times in our country where we had the general elections nullified by the then Chief Justice CJ Maraga, and this making Kenya the first country in Africa to have a general elections nullified. 60 days later, we had the rerun, and President Kenyatta still did emerge the winner and was sworn in and became the president. Looking to 2017, rather, he actually withdrew from the re-election, and consequently which led to President Kenyatta being sworn in for his second term. Now, in 2018, it's also known to be a historic year in our country where it signified a new dawn, and especially so looking at peace in our country that is led by two leaders that were quite the mass movers, and that is Raila Odinga and His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. When they shook hands, the officially handshake came to life. They shook hands, and Raila was then appointed to the African Union Commission's Special Envoy on Infrastructure. In 2019, we had the the Constitution Initiative, that was the amendment of the Constitution that was dubbed Building Bridges Initiative, BBI, an initiative that was eventually quashed by the Supreme Court, but that did not stop Raila Odinga's aspirations, and in 2022 he was able to form the Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party with President Uhuru Kenyatta alongside Kalonzo Musyoka and many other party leaders, and officially threw his hat in the race once more. And as of 2022, he was able to name his running mate as one Martha Wangari Karua. Curia.
Well, again, quite an interesting profile.
Quite an interesting one.
And we'll be discussing it in a bit. But now the name Raila Amolo Odinga is largely associated with democracy, obviously, and we'll have a look at that, and in terms of his contribution to opposition politics as well as democracy, and that will be coming up a little bit later. But, you know, Victor Law, quite a profile here, and, you know, what gives me an interesting look is how protagonists can actually bridge the gap and become friends, because this is what we are seeing in this election, of protagonists now allies.
Absolutely. You know, just to say, that's just a squeezed background check of who Raila Odinga is. But, you know, since he was born, you know, somebody said that he's never practiced engineering. Ever since he left Germany, he's been practicing politics and politics and politics. But then now, in Kenya, we've always been told there are no permanent enemies, no permanent friends. So today, even the last 48 hours remaining is a long time in politics. Anything can happen. So we are likely to see what would happen. And remember, they were in the same camp with the Honorable Ruto at some point. and now they're in opposing camps.
Absolutely.
Interests, they have always been telling us.
All right, let's have a deeper look at the profile of Raila Odinga. The name Raila Amolo Odinga is largely associated with opposition politics. Following the infamous 1982 August coup, Odinga was accused of complicity, charged with treason, and subsequently jailed for 6 years. However, in 1992, he joined elective politics and has had his moments in the service of the country, from the right wing serving in the cabinet, starting with the government of President Daniel Moi and later in the cabinet of President Mwai Kibaki. We focus on this man, Raila Amolo Odinga, the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate.
1945, Raila Amolo Odinga's route to the cabinet and beyond started when he joined elective politics after the reintroduction of multipartyism in 1992. In 2001, Odinga was among leaders appointed to serve in the cabinet. From June 2001 to late 2002, he was appointed by President Moi as Minister for Energy. Between 2003 and 2005, Odinga held key portfolios as he was Minister for Roads, Public Works and Housing. From 2008 to 2013, he served as the Prime Minister of Kenya. Odinga was identified with the country's so-called second liberation. Notably, he was in jail for treason between 1982 and 1988. In June 1989, he was released but incarcerated again in July 1990, together with Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubier, for calling for the return of multi-party politics. In 1992, he was elected as a Member of Parliament for Lang'ata constituency in Nairobi. He would win the seat again in 1997, when he also vied for presidency but lost to Moi. He retained the Lang'ata seat in 2002 and 2007. In his first bid before the presidency in 1997, Odinga finished third after President Moi and the Democratic Party candidate Mwai Kibaki. In the lead-up to the 2002 elections, he ditched a fragmented opposition to join Moi's side KANU in the hope that the president would anoint him his successor. In March 2001, his National Development Party NDP merged with KANU to form the new KANU. He was appointed Minister for Energy, a position he held from June 2001 to late 2002. As soon as he joined NAC, Odinga openly declared Kibaki Tosha Swahili endorsement of Kibaki's candidature for the top seat. Odinga traversed the country campaigning for Kibaki, and when the presidential candidate was involved in an accident that left him indisposed just before the elections, Odinga took the lead and ensured that Kibaki was elected with an overwhelming majority of 67%. Between 2003 and 2005, Odinga and his lieutenants held key portfolios, him holding the Minister for Roads, Public Works and Housing, while James Orengo was appointed Minister for Lands. He and his LDP colleagues campaigned on the no or orange side, thereby rejecting the draft and opposing the president and his yes or banana side. In 2005, when the document was put to vote, the government lost by 43% to Odinga's 57%. He then formed a new opposition outfit, the Orange Democratic Movement. On 30th December 2007, the Electoral Commission of Kenya declared President Kibaki the winner of the presidential election, placing him ahead of Odinga by about 232,000 votes. The opposition, led by Odinga, rejected the result, and what followed was mass action that resulted in widespread violence and deaths. The tragedy attracted the attention of the international community, with the former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan acting as a mediator. A power-sharing deal created a government of national unity with Odinga as Prime Minister. In 2013, Odinga would contest the presidency, this time under a new constitution order that adopted a presidential system of governance. President Kenyatta won the election held on 4th March 2013, garnering 50.51% against Odinga's 43.70%. But Odinga filed a petition at the Supreme Court of Kenya, citing massive failure of the biometric voter registration BVR kits. Kenyatta's inauguration on 9th April 2013 marked the end of Odinga's tenure as Prime Minister. Kenyatta was declared the winner with 54% of the votes cast against Odinga's 43%. Again, the results were contested at the Supreme Court. It was annulled and a fresh vote for the presidency ordered. But on 10th October, Odinga announced his withdrawal from the repeat election. Kenyatta won again and was installed as president for a second term. Raila would declare himself the people's president and held a mock swearing-in ceremony at a tense rally at Uhuru Park. However, on March 9th, 2018, Raila and Uhuru would surprise Kenyans when they appeared outside Harambee House, the office of the president, and declared they had made a truce, which they symbolized with a handshake. Raila was appointed Africa Union Commission's Special Envoy on Infrastructure. President Uhuru and Raila would henceforth work together, with their political relationship reaching its peak with the formation of the Azimio la Umoja Coalition Party, where Uhuru is the chairman and Raila is the party leader. Odinga named Martha Karua as his running.
All right, the profile of Raila Amolo Odinga, the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate. Today he makes his final call at the Kasarani Stadium, where his supporters as well as Kenyans will be streaming in to listen to his final call. And obviously, before we took up the profile, we were talking about his history and his legacy. And you will realize that the Kenya's path to democracy has Raila Odinga's footsteps, and so many of them Victor Olo.
We were just having a conversation the other day with someone and said that if you try once and you give up, then what would you talk about Raila Odinga? This is his 5th time, taking a stab at the presidency. So, which means that he's been trying for the last 25 years, cumulatively.
25 years.
Imagine that.
Right.
Quite an interesting one. 25 years.
What about you, Kyoria?
It is important to say that this is the 5th stab at the presidency, and probably the last. That is, if he does not make it in this election, it means that's just it. So the 5th stab and the final one, and let's see how whether fortunes will favor him in this election. That is about 2 days. Jane.
All right, so from Raila Odinga, we now move to a man that is quite an enigma to many people. This is David Waihiga Mwaure. Not much is known about his private life over the years, and especially looking to his growing up, his parent, his family. There is some information there, but he has been quite guarded about his private life. But as far as his education goes, he graduated from the University of Nairobi with a law degree, and upon the completion of his studies, he was able to set up his own practice, that is Mwaure and Mwaure Advocates, and has been practicing for over 35 years to this day. He has represented various people and has offered his services as a lawyer in areas of arbitration, mediation, commissioning of oaths, among many other spaces that he has found himself in. Now, still as far as his education goes, Mwaure holds a master's degree in leadership from the International Leadership University and is currently pursuing a PhD in the same field, that is international leadership. Now, looking at his political journey, it goes back to the year 2006, and not many actually know this, but in 2006 is when he formed the Agano Party, and this party has been active in his spaces that he has been representing other people and also his political ambitions. But moving to 2010, Mwaure was part of the team that was giving legal advice when the church raised concerns about some clauses that were in the 2010 constitution. And in that same year, 2010, it is when he formally declared his intentions to run for presidency, and particularly so for the 2013 general elections. But before then, in 2011, Simon Bugwa's election as the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji was nullified by the High Court, citing irregularities in the 2007 general elections. He attempted, he threw his hat in the race, wanting to become the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji, but was unsuccessful. In 2013, as he had earlier on declared his presidential bid, he went at it, but along the journey, he dropped off and opted to contest for the gubernatorial seat for Lamu County, to which which he also lost to the current governor, that is Issa Timami. Fast forward to 2021, between the periods of 2013 to 2021, he sort of took a back step politically speaking, but in 2021, following the impeachment of Mike Sonko in December of 2020, his party, Agano Party, endorsed him to vie for this particular seat should the elections be held, but that did not come to be. There wasn't, the elections were not held, and therefore his ambitions in that particular seat did not come to fruition. Moving forward to this year, 2022, he revived his aspirations and went back to the initial seat that he had declared intentions for earlier on, over 10 years ago, and now he is vying was cleared by the IEBC as a presidential candidate in the general elections for this year, 2022, and did pick Ruth Musheru Mutua to be his running mate under the Agano Party.
That's the profile of Wahiga Mwaure, the Agano party leader, and his running mate Ruth Musheru Mutua. And looking at it, we'll be talking about this ambition of wanting to be president, then MP, then governor, then president again. We'll talk about it, but for now, Victor, you want to take us through a deeper profile of Wahiga Mwaure?
Absolutely. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and ordained church minister. His name is on the 2022 presidential ballot paper as he promises to slay the dragon of corruption if elected Kenya's 5th president. Today on Kenya Decides, we give the profile of David Mwaure Wahiga of the Agano Party.
The second time is the charm for David Mwaure Wahiga, one of the 4 candidates seeking to be elected Kenya's 5th president in the August 9th, 2022 general election. Mwaure Wahiga graduated with a law degree from the University of Nairobi in 1981, practicing law for several years before founding Mwaure and Mwaure Wahiga Advocates, a law firm in Nairobi with offices in Lamu. Wahiga has over 35 years of experience in legal practice. He has used his expertise in law to become an arbitrator, mediator, commissioner of votes, notary public, and public secretary. Mwaure, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and an ordained church minister, unsuccessfully vied for the Kamukunji parliamentary seat in 2011 through his Agano Party, which he founded in 2006. This in a by-election following the High Court nullification of Simon Bugwa's election, citing numerous malpractices in the 2007 general election. Before the by-election of 2011, Mwaure had earlier announced his intention to run for the country's top political office in the 2013 elections. After that, however, he dropped out of the presidential race and opted to run for the gubernatorial race. Mwaure got cleared to run for the governor of Lamu County in 2013, but lost to Issa Timami. And in 2021, Agano Party endorsed him to contest for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat after the then governor Mike Sonko was impeached. However, there was no by-election as Sonko's deputy would assume the governor's position, but not after a long court battle. Mwaure now hopes to finally achieve his goal to lead Kenya, but will come up against seasoned politicians like Raila Odinga of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance Party and William Ruto of the United Democratic Alliance, as well as Professor George Wajakoya, who is the Roots Party flag bearer. In his 12-point manifesto, Mwaure promises to slay the dragon of corruption, emphasizing his first order of business will be to act on existing records of all graft cases. His pledge to business owners is that his government will verify all county and national government pending bills and convert them to government bonds. Other items in the manifesto include waiving all standing tax penalties upon assuming office, employing all clergy of registered churches as alternative dispute resolution officers in the same way as Cathys, training of all clergy from registered churches in alternative dispute resolution as government officers, introducing a pollution tax on users and manufacturers of any type of plastic item, reserving garbage collection to companies owned by the youth groups in villages appointed by village councils, and making the Kenya Power and Lighting Company KPLC divest to distributing off-grid solutions like solar and wind turbines. Mwaure, whose running mate is Ruth Mutua, promises to respect and defend the country's constitution, which was amended in 2010, and guard against attempts to mutilate it through non-procedural amendments.
All right, and there you have it. So we are three, one more to go. That is, we've done Raila Odinga, Wajakoya, and Wahiga. So the last one remaining is that one for Deputy President William Ruto of UDA. But Curia, quite an interesting bit that all these three, the four candidates speaking so far, have got one thing in common: to fight corruption.
Yeah, all of them appear to agree on two issues, at least. The general issues. One, the war against corruption, and what you would say economic empowerment. Because like you've had the two main contenders frame it, it appears like this election is about the economy and the empowerment of people because of what we have had to deal with the last few years in terms of the cost of living. And empowerment is top of the agenda, and the war against corruption, because we would agree the pilferage that happens in public coffers has led us to where we are today. But you know, just to have a look at Wahiga Maure for a bit, at least this is the only person who has promised to have the spouses of the two main presidential contenders as ministers in his cabinet. He announced his cabinet the other day, and Ida Odinga and Rachel Ruto feature prominently in his cabinet. It's quite interesting. I think that would build bridges without, you know, risking to look like I'm campaigning for.
And you know what's interesting, Kyria? Looking at the most recent polls that were put out a few days back, the question on the confidence that people have on this particular candidate in regards to the plans that they have for the country, he was actually at the top of that list. Ahead of all the other three candidates, people have faith in him with the plans that he has for the country.
Maybe it is because he's a member of the clergy, and you've had, like Kedis, he also wants to ensure that the clergy are employed by government as part of dispute resolution offices, Victor. And I think that would work, you know, that would work in one way or another. But then again, how do we marry religion from the stipulation of a constitution that Kenya is a secular state? Quite an interesting one there.
That's an interesting bit, because religious leaders or faith-based organizations also play a key role in our democratic space, and we can never ignore them. Remember the other day when there were some utterances which were allegedly made by some leaders, and church leaders and faith-based organizations came out guns blazing, and they always have a space to have a say in our democracy. But one person who is quite going strong on matters economy is one Deputy President William Ruto, who is making his first stab at the presidency in the next 2 days. Jen.
Yes, let's have a look at this man, William Samoei Ruto. Dr. William Samoei Ruto, born in 1966 and making him 56 years of age as of the year 2022, in Uasin Gishu being his birth county. Now, his political journey officially dates back to 1992. That is when he officially stepped into politics, when he joined YK92, that was the youth faction that was under KANU, and this group was particularly formed to drum up support, and especially so from the youth dividend after the reintroduction of multi-partyism in Kenya. Now, in 1997 is when he stepped into elective politics, when he won the Eldoret North constituency member of parliament seat against Reuben Chesire, who was his main competitor then. The following year, in 98, he was moved to the office of the president and served as an assistant minister. In 2002, he was assistant minister moving forward up until 2002, when he was moved to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the same year, he was able to retain his seat when he was re-elected as the member of parliament for Eldoret North constituency. Now, looking at this period, 2002, there were many members that were decamping from KANU after having KANU lost to NARC. Many members were leaving KANU and joining different parties, and particularly so NARC, but he is one of those individuals that stuck through and through with KANU. as many others were exiting the party. And in 2005, under the leadership of the party's chairman, President Uhuru Kenyatta, then as the party's chairman, he was elected as the party's Secretary General. Now, in 2005, he joined arms with Raila Odinga in opposing, he was rather again going against Raila Odinga in opposing the constitutional referendum. And as far as his presidential aspirations go, 2006 was the year he made public his intentions to vie for presidency. And this did not sit very well with many people that are in his particular party, KANU, because he wasn't considered as the ideal candidate to run for presidency. And this led to a lot of frustrations on his end. And ultimately, he left KANU and joined ODM under the leadership of Raila Odinga to seek nomination and to seek his nominations for his presidential aspirations. However, he came third after Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi. Now, in 2007, he again defended his Eldoret North seat in Parliament and was re-elected. In 2007, also again a very sensitive time in our country. ODM lost the elections to NARC, a time that brought a lot of chaos in our country, the post-election period, but that was that. Now, moving forward to the grand coalition that was put in place in 2008, he was part of the teams in the negotiations that saw the formation of the grand coalition a year later. And between 2008 to 2010, he served under the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, looking at 2010, he was moved from agriculture to education and later would be suspended from cabinet. His party, that is URP, officially merged with Uhuru Kenyatta's party, that is National Alliance, in 2011, and together the duo went at it for the 2013 general elections with President Uhuru Kenyatta as the president and Ruto as his running mate, and they both won these particular general elections successfully. Now, they have worked together through and through. Moving forward to 2017, the duo went at it again, Uhuru and William Ruto, and successfully winning a second term in office, much as the first round was nullified by the Supreme Court. The second time around, it was uncontested and they went to be sworn in as a duo. But however, from 2018 through to 2022, there has been a lot that has been said in regards to the relationship between President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto. However, he made his intentions clear in vying for presidency, and in 2022, he was cleared as a candidate by the IEBC, and only on the 15th of May in 2022 is when he made public his running mate, and that was one Rigathi Gachagua.
Right, that's just it in terms of the profile of Deputy President William Ruto, who is having his first stab for the presidency in this election, and we'll be looking at his profile as narrated. But obviously, when you look at his profile, you see as somebody who has been keen on upsetting systems to rise to where he is. Let's have a look at the profile of Dr. William Samoei Ruto.
Born William Kipchirchir Samoei Arap Ruto on the 21st of December 1966 in Kamagutwas in Kishu County, Ruto first got onto the political scene when he joined the Cyrus Jirongo-led Youth for KANU in 1992, popularly known as YK92. YK92 was a group of young people formed to drum up support for the then President Daniel Arap Moi after the reintroduction of multi-partyism in Kenya. Ruto served as the organizing secretary for the controversial group. In 1997, Ruto vied for the Eldoret North parliamentary seat and won against Ruben Tesire, a seasoned politician. After KANU won the elections, President Moi appointed Ruto assistant minister in the office of the president in 1998. He made history as the only ever assistant minister to ever attend cabinet meetings. Ahead of the 2002 general election, Ruto briefly served as Minister for Home Affairs. President Moi's decision to endorse Uhuru Kenyatta as his successor triggered serious fallout in KANU that saw long-term party leaders and cabinet ministers George Saitoti and Kalonzo Musyoka champion the decamping from the party. Raila Odinga, whose National Democratic Party had merged with KANU in 2001, also left. They formed the Liberal Democratic Party, which joined forces with the National Alliance Party of Kenya to form the National Rainbow Coalition (NARC) and picked Mwai Kibaki as the presidential candidate, winning the 2002 elections. Ruto recaptured the Eldoret North parliamentary seat and remained loyal to KANU despite the party losing the presidential election, becoming the party secretary general in 2005. During the 2005 constitutional referendum, Ruto spearheaded the anti-change team with orange as the symbol, alongside Raila Odinga, who had fallen out with President Mwai Kibaki over failure to honor a pre-election memorandum of understanding where Raila Odinga would have become Prime Minister of Kenya. The orange team won against Kibaki's banana side. The win gave birth to the Raila Odinga-led Orange Democratic Movement. In 2006, Ruto announced his ambition to vie for the presidency in the elections that were scheduled for the following year, but KANU quickly dismissed his plans. He decamped to ODM and participated in the party's presidential nominations, coming in third after Musalia Mudavadi and the eventual winner Raila Odinga. He campaigned for Raila Odinga in the 2007 polls. Ruto was re-elected for the third time to represent Eldoret North constituency. In the Grand Coalition government that followed the disputed 2007 presidential election, Ruto was appointed to head the Agriculture Ministry in 2008, where he served until 2010, when he was fired over a maize scandal. A failed no-confidence motion against Ruto would see him back in the government, this time as the Minister for Higher Education. This also did not last, following his suspension from the cabinet after the High Court ruled that he had a case to answer in connection with the alleged payment of millions of shillings arising from deals involving the Kenya Pipeline Company. Despite Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta being cited by the International Criminal Court (ICC) for crimes against humanity in the chaos emanating from the 2007 general election, the duo would merge their parties, Ruto's United Republican Party (URP) and Uhuru's the National Alliance Party, to form the Jubilee Coalition. Under the coalition, they would successfully vie for the presidency in the 2013 general election, with Uhuru Kenyatta becoming the president while Ruto became the country's deputy president. Ruto, alongside Uhuru, would retain the presidency in August 2017, this time under a unified Jubilee Party. Despite the Supreme Court nullifying the results, they emerged victorious in the repeat election months later. Ruto would then fall out with his boss, President Kenyatta, and Jubilee Party declaring to vie for the presidency in August 2022 on the United Democratic Alliance under the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. On 15th May 2022, Ruto named Madeira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua as his running mate.
Very well. That was the profile of Deputy President William Ruto, who is now going for the top seat for the first time this time, with only 2 days to go. We are just having a conversation here that we've been talking about 2022 for the longest time. Now we are talking about 48 hours. That is life. That is life. It will come, it will pass, and then we'll also be talking about something else. And at this particular point, let me introduce Joy Brenda Mdivo, who is with us here in studio. She's an advocate of the High Court. And before we went on air, she was singing some gospel song here. I don't know what you're talking about, Joy. Good morning.
Good morning. No, but today is, like we were talking when we were off air, today is one of those days where we will know whether as Kenyans we're really politically mature.
Right.
Or whether we still have some growing to do. But I place my bet on Kenyans that today will be a
That is based
day.
on the two rallies that you're having at the CBD.
Yes, yes.
Nyayo and Kasarani. And when you look at the locality and the proximity, well, we might say that they are, it's not so close, but there is a big test even for the politicians and their supporters as well.
That is true. If you look at William Ruto's campaigns, when he's around Githurai, Kasarani area, he draws very large crowds. It would have made sense for him to be in Kasarani, while you know that Raila Odinga was MP in Langata for a long time.
Yes.
And Kibera is on the side that is closest to Nyayo Stadium. So there will be people crossing to go over to Kasarani, and others crossing from Githurai side coming to Nyayo Stadium. So that's why I was saying today is going to be a test of whether Kenyans are politically mature or whether we still have some growing to do. But today I will be a betting woman, and I put my money on Kenyans just, going about today and enjoying their last, today is a show of might.
Yeah, because you can imagine, there's a group who is going to be moving from Kasarani, coming to Nyayo Stadium. At the end of the day, they will crisscross, or at some point, they are going to board same matatus going back to their home areas. You can imagine. So, as you put it, we are putting our bet on Kenyans on how we are going to show the political maturity as we speak. But, 2 days to go. What should we expect between now, because today being the last day of campaigns, what should we expect in the next 48 hours to go?
So the next 48 hours, what will obviously happen is that the big campaigns will be over. But in Kenya, we know that that's when the campaigns now go, for lack of a better word, chini ya maji. So everything becomes covert. So there'll be plenty of meetings, private meetings, plenty of door-to-door. That's when now the party operatives take over, the foot soldiers, as it were. The in person, these days in the advent of social media, there'll be plenty of memes flowing around and forwards and things like that. So the campaign will basically go offline, but it's unlikely to stop. This is the time when also the parties are buttoning down on they're crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. The agents, are they in place? Have they been stationed? Do they have their mulika mwizis? Do they have instructions? The parties will be looking, okay, the places that they don't have agents, do they have candidates? So the final logistics now are being put in place. So the activity is far from over. The next 48 hours as well is the time when the IEBC has to do what they said they were going to do yesterday. This print this register. Now, from what I understand, if they printed the register and put it in a room, they need like a 50 by 100 room, because the register is so large. You're talking over 22 million names with IDs and photos and all these other things. So it's very bulky. So the IEBC, I'm sure, will be working overtime in the next 42 hours to try and deliver this register to as many polling stations as they possibly can. I don't think they'll manage to do for every single place, but I think they will try as much as possible. So the next 48 hours will be a frenzy. So for Kenyans, maybe they'll have a little less high octane, because this is the last night you're seeing the adverts. This is the last night you're seeing the I appeal to you Kenyans. But after that, the ones who are involved in the elections, hakuna kulala until Tuesday.
Exactly. And actually, this is the time that to all the candidates, this is the crunch time, because as you put it, is the last time you're checking all the checklist. You do have the party agents in place, IEBC also running up and down to make sure that all the materials are in right polling centers. One thing that Chebukati said, that they are going to use the manual register. Finally, he said that they are going to use the manual register, or the printed copies, as you may put it. This is according to the court ruling, and now they are compelled to use it. It was long coming.
The manual register was always in play. Only difference was they had a truncated copy before. So remember when they came from Greece and the vice chair was addressing the media, and somebody asked her, so does it have copies of the manual register? And she said, yes, it's actually included in the pack. But what was included in the pack was the truncated one, the one that did not have the full voter details. So it had enough to identify you, but it didn't have your complete details. Now, when they went to court, what they ordered to do is to provide the one that has the complete details. So what you're going to have as now the printed register is not just your name, part of your ID number and polling station. It will be everything minus your fingerprints, basically. So it will be your photo, your full ID number, every identifier that you use during your registration should be on that manual paper. And that's what I was saying. The printing alone is monumental, because this is not something that they had planned before. So if they had planned for it, they would have done it in Greece probably with the rest of the other stuff. But now, for the next few days, I'm sure there are quite a few photocopying companies in Kenya that will be getting a big tender, because this is work that has to be segmented. It can't be done, hit print and wait. It's a big job.
It's a big job. Kioria?
Quite an interesting one. A little bit later, we'll be engaging Gibson Githori. But Joy, when you say that it may not be possible to deliver this register to all polling stations, and knowing what led to the nullification of the 2017 election, isn't that dangerous on the part of the IEBC? Doesn't it put it at a very odd place? And number two, the register and the KIMS kit, because it's like the IEBC said you would be identified with the KIMS kit and then use the manual register. Probably you can be able to explain a bit on that. Those two questions, John.
Okay, so the law is very clear on this one. When it comes to voter identification, you need the KIMS kit, because the KIMS kit is the one that has got your voter identification details. So you walk into a polling station, the polling clerk checks your fingers that you have got no ink to say that you've not voted before. Then they go ahead and look at your identification documents so that they're original. Once they see you have your original identification document, they go ahead and try your biometrics. Now, most of us just use 1 or 2 fingerprints in biometrics, but our KIMS kit took all 10 fingerprints because we recognize that something may happen. Maybe you work with your thumb, you play guitar or something, and so your fingerprints are not too recognizable. So you try all 10. If all 10 fail, then they alphanumerically enter your ID number to pull up your details. If they do those two things and your details do not come up in the KIMS kit, but you insist that you're a voter in that polling station, then now they go to the manual and look for you physically. If they find you, then they can strike you out and still allow you to vote. So before this manual bit came in, they would have had only the truncated. So they would be relying on the last, I think it's 4 digits of your ID number for identification. But now what they will have is not just the last 4 digits, they'll have your full ID number and your photo as part of the identification. So the primary identification will still happen on the KIMS kit. And the big idea was so that you have checks and balances, because if you identify 120 voters on the KIMS kit, we expect 120 ballots to have been plucked from the book. We expect 120 ballots to have been cast in each of the 6 boxes. So it was supposed to, at the end of the day, the reconciliation was supposed to work across board. But now with the manual, there are those who will not be in the KIMS kit, but might appear in the manual. So it will make the reconciliation a little bit more, interesting, but we don't expect massive failure. But regarding my other comment about they may not be able to get to all the places, I would imagine if I was Chebukati that I would start with the areas where I know network coverage is low, I know the likelihood of the KIMS kits falling, maybe there's no power, there's no things. I would start with those areas first. So like, for example, if you're in Nairobi, if the worst came to the worst, IBC can still be printing the Nairobi ones and distributing even on the day of the election. So I would imagine that they would start with the most far-flung places, because printing the 22 million for the 46,233 polling stations in 2 days is a monumental task. So I would imagine that IBC has prioritized to start with the most difficult areas first, coming to areas like Nairobi where you can replace the KIMS kit easily, or you can quickly put in stopgap measures. They would start with the places where it would be catastrophic if nothing happened because it's too far to reach. That's how I think they would be approaching this. But obey, they say they must obey the court orders. They have no option.
Curia? You've been answered?
Absolutely. The only bit, and probably we'll take it up a little bit later with Gibson Gisori, obviously is why these political parties, some of them are jittery about the manual register, the others are jittery about the electronic register. We'll talk about that in a bit.
All right. So, Joy, IBC, at the end of the day, they are going to be the key players from the political parties, the candidates, and now Chebukati now will be the referee. Every eye will be on Chebukati, and we should be expecting almost an hourly update on the progress. We have got over 18,000 observers currently, as said by Chebukati. That shows the kind of interest that the Kenya election has locally and even regionally.
That is true, and it's not just the 18,000. There are many more Kenyans who will be quote-unquote observers, even though they're not accredited by IBC.
The silent observers.
Because you've had talk about take care of your vote, chunga kura, protect the vote. So there are many Kenyans who will vote, but they'll still, hang around the fence and keep their eyes and ears open. Because for many Kenyans, one thing that I think has been very annoying with our elections is that they're not easily verifiable. We cannot tell who won. And there's nothing more annoying than you engage in an exercise and the outcome is always marred in all this and that. So like when you're reading the profiles, for example, of all the candidates, and then you say Uhuru Kenyatta went ahead and won that election, I'm sure that people somewhere watching us are like, he didn't win. Because
everybody has an opinion.
For many Kenyans, they keep feeling like our elections don't bring the result that they're supposed to. So this is one of those elections that I think Chebukati has a point to prove. For him and his other two commissioners who did not resign, this is their last bite at the cherry. They're not going to do another election after this. After the last one that was nullified, irregularities and illegalities, he also has a personal quest to sort of prove he can deliver a credible election. So Chebukati and his fellow commissioners, the other two who didn't resign, are actually motivated to live on a high. So I think that's why he's trying very hard to try and run a very tight ship this time around. At the same time, the international community is looking at us. I was listening to a Twitter space yesterday from the region, and the other countries in the region are actually looking to Kenya and say, look, you guys have been trailblazers in this. If you guys get it right, we have a hope that Uganda will get it right, that Tanzania will get it right. We have a hope that DRC will get it right. So the members of the Jumuiya, the East Africa community, the callers, the speakers who are in the space were saying, this is important not just for Kenya, it's important also for the region. Because here we've had the problem of strongman leadership, we have the problem of elections that are also not too encouraging, so they're also looking to us to lead the way. So it's not important just for Kenya to get this right, it's important for even our position as a leader in the region to get this right.
Remember, we also sit in the Security Council, so everything is going to be on test, not from the Chebukati himself and the commission, but us as Kenyans. How we are going to deliver that election is going to reflect how we are going to be at the Security Council, where President Kenyatta is also a member. Remember, the 2017 election was nullified, and I still go back to Chebukati. There must be a huge test for him and the commission to redeem themselves, and as you've said, for them to live on a high. What do you think is running through the head of Chebukati and his team currently?
You know, the last time when Chebukati was doing this election, he was a newbie at the job. Remember, we bundled out the Isaac Hassan Commission very close to the election, and we installed the Chebukati Commission. So in my opinion, at the time, they were very new at the job. They did not know the job very well, and they were thrust with this big responsibility. And when push came to shove, you saw how things went down for Chebukati. Now he has had the benefit of being battle-hardened, as it were. So he has faced challenges to his authority. He has faced people leaving office. He has faced a lot of, upheaval. And he has stood for himself up to a level where people started thinking he's a bit belligerent.
Straight and strong face until the end.
And the stanza is a little bit quiet, but you can see a steely determination that he has had. So in my opinion, he's a senior member of the bar. He's a person who has been in the profession for a long time. IEBC jobs have been known to be professional killers. It looks like Chebukati does not intend that to be his epitaph. He wants to leave the IEBC and leave the IEBC with his head held high, that he can be able to have a career after the IEBC.
Perhaps you can just look back at 2017 and said, we messed up, so I must redeem myself and deliver this particular election. And for him, like I said, he doesn't get another chance. He's a vice chair, and the other commissioners who were recruited the other day can redeem themselves in the next election in 2027. But for him, it's a done deal.
But for him, by next year, I think their contracts are up. So if he doesn't do this right, he lives under a shadow of, perpetual failure. You failed in 2017 and you failed again in 2022. So I think Chebukati will try his best to be run a tight a ship as possible and try and deliver a credible election. But that said, we haven't helped him a lot. Political parties have kept going to court. The civil society have kept going to court.
Which you're part of, and you tell me why the civil society are putting Chebukati in a very tight rope.
It is primarily because a lot of the time in Kenya, when you do an administrative action, so for example, the manual register, it was a letter and said, you know what, this is what you're going to do, and you issue to people, and you're doing this with how much time is there left. There's hardly any time to maneuver. And that's why you find civil society says, hey, no, tell you what, let's take this to court. Let's see whether we can change this. So Kenyans are so keen on the law being followed that I think even for Chebukati, he should have just stuck to the script from the beginning. But, well, as they say, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Curia?
Indeed, it is what it is. Let's talk a bit about, the preparations of the IEBC. And I'm joined by Wakili Gibson Gisore, who is also a political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. my question goes to the manual register, electronic register. This ruling by the High Court. If you look at social media, you see a form of celebration for those who feel they won, and some doom for those who think they lost. Why are parties so jittery about this debate?
You see, this debate is very interesting because it comes at a time when everybody does not trust, Kenyans do not trust the IBC as much, because of course there have been other things which have been happening around the elections preparation, which now when people see this happening, it raises the antennas and they say, now we don't know what is going on. Why this case is going back and forth on this? So that has got to, of course, make you curious. Political parties themselves, of course, we are going to have winners and losers. So somebody is laying ground for something that in case there is a likelihood that at some point this can be used against me. So somebody has got to start shouting the earliest, so that when they lose, eventually they will say, you know, we said this. We said this. We said this, that these people were planning to rig us out. Yes, so
and
that is a very good...
The register will be the excuse.
The register will be the excuse, most probably, because this debate has not started now. IBC was insisting that they're going to do purely an electronic register. Some parties said no. What if some of our people are quarry workers who have lost their their details on the fingers? So are they not going to vote? You're going to disadvantage them. So that also became a challenge. And it's not the first time. This has been an issue from previously. You realize previously that was part of the issues which were raised, that especially the 2017 election, that this election was supposed to be done digitally. But then later, the IBC was also recommending that the forms be delivered physically by the returning officers. And people were like, if you already transmitted, why does somebody need to come and verify what? You know, those are some of the issues. So that's the backdrop of where we're coming from. And people are like, we cannot fully trust the IBC on this. There could be some games, there could be something they're hiding up their sleeves. So it's very important to raise your voice, just to even if you are beaten hands down, you start saying, we said this.
All right. Victor and Joy have quite dealt with the preparation, whether IBC is ably prepared, but just to engage you a bit on the preparedness of the IEBC, particularly on the issue of Chebukati as, you know, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. In 2017, it appears like he was not the one calling shots then, and you remember that kind of haggling between him and the CEO of the IEBC. When you look at him in this election, does he appear like he's in charge?
I will want to say that for a moment when Chebukati was given this seat, I highly doubted whether he will make it for this long. But he has survived over and over. He has become a seasoned elections chairman, given that now subsequent elections came by, and he was able to shepherd them successfully. So that brings in some kind of trust on behalf of Kenyans, and even myself, because I highly doubted he could come this far. Having stuck through the process when the others, of course, abandoned ship, has also emboldened him, has also given him some experience, has also made him to be tough enough to know what Kenyans expect. I tend to have some hope that Chebukati is going to deliver this election, as Joy has said that this is his last shot, so yeah, he will want to leave the stage at a high note. So I have faith that he is going to do a good job, and he doesn't. Nobody wants a bungled election. Nobody, not even a village wag. Everybody wants a successful election. So Chebukati should be able to see that through.
Joy, I'm sitting here wondering, in terms of communication to stakeholders were very important. Let's say on the register, let's say about the transmission, let's talk about ballot papers. Has the IEBC communicated effectively to remove some of its doubts we're hearing from political parties 2 days to the election?
I think they've attempted to. Over the last 48 hours, we have seen an attempt of them even using their media center, sort of getting us acclimatized to hearing from them from Bomas of Kenya. So I think they are trying to be a little bit more communicative. At the beginning, that was one of the biggest criticisms. They were doing things and nobody knew what they were doing. Until now, much later, when the political parties start giving a lot of pushback, then you see them trying to come up and sort of explain themselves. So for example, like the process for why we are using the manual versus the electronic, it's something that is written in law. They should have explained to Kenyans. Section 44 of the Elections Act, Section 44A of the Elections Act, as read together with Regulation 69 of the Elections Act, says that we must use the KIMS kit, and then the manual is complementary. How to complement the complementary, they ought to have explained to Kenyans. But you go ahead and write a letter. The next thing you do is you send people in a panic. Then now you get this blowback. And now, even if they could have negotiated a way to make this easier on themselves, they find themselves compelled by the force of law. So in terms of communication, there is a place where the IBC ought to have improved a little bit, but they did not really think that it was wise to give too much information. Maybe part of it, I would not blame them, might have been some preparations they felt were sensitive, that they needed to be handled delicately, and so they were not over-communicative. But going where we are going, and with the level of distrust and mistrust in our politics, in our politicians, and in our systems, it's important now that they talk to Kenyans a lot more. Because remember, part of the nullification of 2017 was this phrase, illegalities and irregularities. That means absolutely nothing. Ask Gesore, he'll tell you, what does that mean? It's so general, it could mean anything. It could mean you walked into the room in a style and manner that I did not prefer. But because there were so many gray areas, the court was like, you know what, we've tried to look through this and it's as clear as mud. If they are clear in their communication, it will even help clear up some of the things that people were wondering, how is this going to happen? So even in coming up the last 48 hours, I would expect Bukati and his people to be very much on top of everything, giving Kenyans as much information as possible. This is our election preparedness. Let me just throw in a little spanner. I don't know if you remember this, but there was an election in Nigeria where people were supposed to be going into the polling station at 6 a.m. and at 5:45, the IBC says, you know what, I don't think we are ready. We are not going to vote today. Sorry, bye. If that happened in Kenya, it would just be catastrophic. So the IBC needs to keep talking to us.
Absolutely. Before I bring in Victor, quite an interesting point that you raised, but going back to 2017, Gesore, have we had a report of the audit of the 2017 election so that the IBC clears doubt that the basis on which the election was nullified in 2017 shall not pop up again in this election? We have addressed them in 1, 2, 3 ways.
No. As Kenyans, I don't think we have. But as for IBC, they must have gotten their corrections. So I think right now, the kind of preparations I'm seeing IBC put up, as Joya said, I'm seeing an IBC which is ready to cure some of the mistakes. On the part of communication, they have still not done a very effective job, but I think it's a government body. I think they are way above other government bodies, but we expect much more from them. There is the aspect of getting an audit report. I don't think the best thing I could have expected myself is that the aspect of the servers which were never opened should have been brought to us and told us that this is what was in the servers. But that issue has always been under tight lock and key. Nobody's speaking about it totally. It was never brought to the court and up to now. So that is some of the aspects which I think, I hope in their own knowledge, they have a better plan this time, so that in any case this thing goes to court and they are told bring the servers, they won't be giving the kind of excuses they were giving last time, which were very pathetic, and annoying. So we don't expect that from Chebukati-led team. We expect them to give us 1, 2, 3, and they must have cured. So some very interesting aspect which is going to happen in this election, and courtesy of a court decision which was given recently, is that the presidential elections will be happening in the constituencies. So the decision which is made in the constituencies, courtesy of the minor Kiai case in 2017, is what is going to be affected. And that was the constitution aspires, that the declaration of the person at the constituency should not be tampered. You remember last election, an election has been declared in a constituency, like I come from Nyamira, and then that election, the IBC is busy announcing a different result. When the journalist asked AA we were on the ground and this was what...
This is not what was happening.
They were no, wait. That is not final. Whatever you have is not final. What we have is what is final. So you are like, now, where did it change? Where did it change? And then they are saying, actually, we are in the process of waiting for the returning officer to bring the manual to actually confirm. But what have you announced already? You know, that confusion. So this election continues to, the preparation process continues to expose some of the dark underbelly issues which were maligning the 2017 election, and we expect the IBC now, of course, coming. The courts have also had their bit in trying to lay bare that this is what the Constitution expects.
Absolutely. Probably, Victor, and because you are a member of this very noble profession, we have, for the first time, the opportunity to tally votes, just as IBC is doing.
Absolutely. And you see, Chebukati said that even us as media, we have got, you know, that free will to have our tallying centers as much as we want. We can have our parallel tallying centers, but the final declaration will be made by Chebukati. But that brings me to another question, Joy. That calls for the question of transparency. But are we not going to have different conflicting results? Media House A has this, B has that, Chebukati announces that. And we find a situation, God forbid, to the Supreme Court. What happens?
Okay, the process has been made very transparent, and that is why I think the IBC has the confidence to tell the different political parties, different media houses, and even you as a member of the public to go ahead and do your own tally. So this is what's going to happen from what the IBC did in their transmission simulation exercise. Is when you close polling, right? Then you pour all the things on the table, you do the counting and everything. Once you're done, you take the Form 34A. In the presence of all the agents, you fill in the Form 34A. Once you have filled it in, all the agents are happy, they all sign it. Once they all sign it, each of them gets a copy. Now let's deal with the presidential only. So what they agreed with the presidential, because the thing has got 6 counterfoils, the RO retains one goes in the box, and the remaining 4, each of the agents gets a copy of the original, you know, because it's carbonated. So it will be a copy of what has been signed. But over and above that, they each are able to take a photograph if they want. They can take an electronic copy of the hard copy they're given. Once this is done, the RO now takes a picture on the KIMS kit, because the KIMS kit is unable to take a photo. It takes a photo, and then now that's where the internet comes in. You don't need the internet during the day, but you need the internet now to transmit the image to the IBC portal at the tallying and National Tallying Center. Once it comes into the portal at the National Tallying Center, 2 things happen. Because you transmit the image, but you also manually enter the details of what the details on the paper are. So what arrives in Nairobi is the mathematical tabulation as well as the image of the results. And that, this time around, unlike last time, this time around will be uploaded in real time. So members of the public will be able to see them coming in. So like if you were at the simulation, we were watching, saying, we've received from 200 polling stations so far, 400 polling stations so far. These ones are pending verification because the image and the numericals have to be verified before it's uploaded on the portal. So what you're able to tally is what you're getting from the IEBC portal. So if you have agents on the ground, or if you've got people on the ground, all you need to ask them is an image of what they saw at the polling station and compare with the image that you find on the IEBC portal. Those two then should marry. So the people need to understand that tallying is you and a calculator doing the total. But the announcement of the final results still remains Chebukati's, because he's the returning officer for the presidential election. He's the one who must make the declaration of Fulani is the winner. And the provisional results that are coming in with the images, again, as Gesori has correctly pointed out, is only backed up if all the 46,233 Form 34As arrive at the constituency tallying centers and they're reduced into 290 Form 34Bs. Now those Form 34Bs is what Chebukati will use to look at what is in the portal and to look at what he has on the ground and then be able to make the announcement. But we know from the Maina Kiai case, the final result is not the Form 34B, is what was contained in the Form 34A. So the integrity of the Form 34A as appearing on the portal and as appearing with the agents has to be, those ones have to marry.
So this notorious Form 34A, because even during 2017 court hearing, it was all about Form 34A, 34A, 34A. And Wakila said, even the law stipulates that the final results will be announced by the Chebukati himself.
Yes.
But Form 34A at the constituency level will be final. What does that imply?
No, Form 34A at the polling station is final.
Is final.
The one where in your classroom, where you have voted, what that guy signs, that's a final.
That's it.
Yeah, but you know there are 46,233 of those. Chebukati can't go through all those in the 7 days that has been given to announce the election. So that's why, for administrative purposes, those polling stations that are in a certain constituency all come together to a constituency tallying center.
Yes.
So the guy in the constituency tallying center is supposed to enter all your information, and the Form 34B this time is not a physical one. Once he has entered all your information, it auto-generates the Form 34B and prints it. That is what the IBC have used to create that stopgap. You've heard Gesora saying how on the ground the result was this, but when it came to Nairobi it was different.
It was something.
So this time it's not up to the constituency tallying officer to do the manual tabulation. His work is to feed the information into the computer at the constituency tallying center, and then the printout of the Form 34B comes out, and then now he brings that to Nairobi. So that is how they are trying to mitigate the human error, let's call it human error, that has been happening in the past, such that if you're vigilant with what happens at the polling station, and you are sure that that's what has arrived at the constituency tallying center, human error there has been minimized by auto-generating a Form 34B, which now shall be brought to Chebukati. Now he'll have only 290 to look through, and he can do that within the 7 days allotted.
Exactly.
Because I think they're giving themselves until Saturday latest to make the announcement.
So, Kira, no wonder Chebukati says that they're confident they are going to deliver this election promptly and it's be verified.
That is the promise by Chebukati, and obviously it's something you have to look at, and whether indeed these things, as Joy paints them, whether indeed the system is foolproof. But I've just seen a letter here from the United Democratic Alliance. They have written to the IEBC chairperson seeking a meeting between presidential candidates to discuss the decision by the High Court on the manual register thing and how it will be applied and what consequences it has. So like I've said, there are jitters, between the political actors on the use of the manual register vis-a-vis what the IEBC had announced. But let's look at the transmission of results from that point of voting all the way up until when Chebukati tells us who is the next president of the Republic of Kenya. Question is the system really foolproof?
I can't speak for IBC because
Clever man.
I speak for IBC. And given that in 2017 we never saw the surfers, we don't know whether this time they are intact or they are going to be foolproof.
Maybe they are in Uganda.
Maybe they could be in Uganda, or maybe they are in Nairobi now, because that part we have not been told. But we expect nothing less. We expect nothing less from the IBC, that we need to have a foolproof election. But the confidence I have this time is the aspect of the minor KI case and some of the issues which were brought by. And that is why now IBC has got to come clean on all those issues. You've talked of an audit. That is what we need to hear as Kenyans. As we go to vote, that my vote will be well guarded at the station, transmitted properly to the constituency tallying center, and then of course back to Nairobi, as Joy has elaborated on those issues. So if anything is amiss among those, then we have the transparency aspect. Journalists will be playing a very key role in this election as opposed to the previous elections. Now, you remember, like in the US, journalists could be in the CNN station and counting states. They're like, that presidential candidate has won that state, let's go to the next. That is the kind of election we are expecting. So that out of the 290 constituencies, especially for the presidential one, you expect, after IBC has verified, you are free to declare that is UDA zone, that is an Azimio zone. And if you are at 250 out of 290 and your presidential candidate is leading, you should start celebrating. Because whatever results the journalists will have gotten from the ground and IBC will have confirmed, you'll be free to declare that side has been cleared. For as long as you wait for the call from IBC that go ahead and announce, whatever you have is a legitimate thing, you're good to go. So that kind of transparency is what it is that we are going to see, and I think it moves us closer to a cleaner election as opposed to the previous ones.
Joy Mudivo, there's a query that Victor makes, and honestly so, because the media landscape in Kenya is quite huge, and you have had accusations of media houses that appear to be leaning towards a presidential candidate and the other towards another presidential candidate. At this point, because the IBC revealed at a good time that the media would have, the work of tallying votes also, or could participate in the tally, just like we have organized the joint presidential debate, you don't think we had time to organize a joint tally between media houses?
That would have been most preferable, but like you said, different media houses have got different media interests. This is not unique. Like if you look in other jurisdictions, if you watch Fox News, for example, in the States, you know where they're leaning politically. If you watch CNN, you know where they're leaning politically. And so it's not something that is strange. The only people I think in Kenya who need to remain neutral are you as truly here. You need to remain neutral because you are state funded. But for the others that are private enterprises, for lack of a better word, they are free to support whomever, whenever. And maybe that's why it makes a case against a national tally. For media houses, you need the checks and balances from one to the other. However, what it does do, it provides additional cushions. I think you are not able to fudge the numbers. So, for example, we've been treated to a lot of opinion polls, all of them saying different things. But he who pays the piper calls the tune. This is one chance, for example, for media houses to be able to keep a parallel tally. So as the IBC is uploading and the media houses are uploading, so it gives Kenyans a better picture of what to expect. What that does is that even before the final result is announced by Chebukati, you have an opportunity to be able to call it. So for example, if you watch elections in the States, let me just go to the States because those are the ones that are notorious. You'll hear CNN saying something like, and now we are able to call Nyamira for Raila Odinga because we have received results from 50 of the 55 polling stations, and the ones that are left is not enough. Even if they all go to this candidate, are not enough to. So you are able to make those predictions early enough. The role that plays is that it keeps the temperatures in the country down. You'll remember during the Isaac Hassan Commission, one of the things that kept terrorizing Kenyans was the fact that you had to wait until the hourly update for him to come and say, now, I have papers from the following 5, and then he reads 5, and then he goes back to sleep. And all of you are left there wondering, okay, so what does it mean? And that distrust is what gets people heightened to a level of inaibiwa, inafichwa. But this real-time updating, and especially by media houses, will not only be able to help media houses predict the outcomes, it will also give Kenyans information to keep them calm, allow them to go around other businesses knowing that there's somebody who's doing their math on their behalf. So it's important that they keep them separate, because if somebody is in a leaning they're politically leaning in a certain way, but are reporting a certain result, then Kenyans will be like, yeah, we know they don't support that candidate, so this must be the real results if that's what they're saying. So,
but remember, Chebukati said that he's going to announce the results mchana peupe. That's according to him.
Yes,
broad daylight. There are no night announcements. You've raised a very interesting bit that we have got different, tallying centers. We have got different returning officers. The Mwananchi is here. We have got the agents here. We have got the final referee, who is the Chebukati. But then, one thing which is, quite close to people's hearts is a final result. And when you look at those figures, at the Bomas of Kenya, you start to wonder, where do these come from? How do I verify them? And at that particular point, when you remember the issue of Tharaka Nithi, people went to sleep. An hour or so later, things changed. You understand?
December 29th.
Exactly. And
2012.
Everything was just confusing. We can say that Chebukati is out to redeem the image of IBC and even the previous commissions that there were. All right? How is he going to do this?
One of the things that IBC has done, to their credit, is that they have kept the information on how many registered voters, where these registered voters are. So, for example, now we know exactly how many voters exist in Tharaka Nithi. So you can't come tomorrow and tell us the Rakanidi has produced 700,000 votes.
Yes.
We'll be like, how? And we have the register that tells us there are only 29,000 registered voters there. My numbers are not factual. I'm just extrapolating. So because that time they were saying the Nidi votes came and zikaangusha zingine zote. And even right now, if you look at the numbers of the Rakanidi, they're not that much. So that tells you there's a lot of monkey business. One of the things that these elections have done this time around is reduce the human interface as much as possible, such that you leave what the humans have to do is to enable the machines to take over.
Exactly.
And this is what is giving Kenyans assurance. So, for example, let's talk about this manual register, why it's very jittery. Yeah? It's because in previous elections, what happens is, in the morning, people come very many, and then you do a lot of voting. But around nane, satisa, people are finished.
Yeah.
And the guys are sitting in the polling station like this, just waiting for poll to come. So what would happen is, they would take the register, they have people's ID numbers, and they would vote on their behalf, basically. And that's why you'd find there are places where the turnout was so high, you'd even have, 97%. And you're like, people didn't even die in that polling station. Everybody who was registered voted. And so it was used for top-up, for lack of a better word. So you vote on behalf of people. So we introduced the BVR kit. That time we called them BVR kit. So the BVR kit now was like, you have to appear in the BVR for you to appear in the manual. But the BVR kit suffered such massive failures that we decided, you know what, this BVR is not working. We went back to manual. So there's no way to cross-check that these numbers make sense. So this time around, we have the KIMS kit, and we also have the manual register. But do you know, before you use the manual register, there has to be, the person who gives you the authorization to revert to manual from using KIMS kit is Chebukati himself. So let's say I'm the returning officer in Embakasi, where I come from, Embakasi East constituency. And then I look and I try, and it doesn't work. I communicate to headquarters and tell them our KIMS kits have failed. And they try and make sure, but in fact, they have failed. The authorization comes from Chebukati to say, okay, fine, in that constituency, shelve the KIMS kits and everybody use the manual. So by the time it even happens, you're talking about an hour of back and forth before the final authorization. So it's not up to the polling clerk to make a decision, to end the manual. That's not how it works. So to answer your question, this time around, the level of discretion left to the returning officer, they used to be very powerful in making decisions on how the votes will happen, even agreeing on how we'll count. Can we agree we leave the boxes here, we go and have dinner, then we come back and count?
But right now, their powers have been trimmed.
That legal room is gone. Everything is done there, then finalized, buttoned down before you guys are free to go.
All right. Kiore, perhaps Wakili can also answer this one. Now, what's the role of Mwananchi? Because we've talked about the IBC, we talked about the political players, but there is one person we are forgetting about here, the voter. Wakili.
That's a very interesting question. The voter is the most important person this time because it is his decision that we are actually discussing. And whatever it is that we expect, whatever the product of his voting is, what we are looking at. The voter is a very important person in that if people don't vote, then the election will, whatever it is that will come out of it, of course, will be a slim margin. But we expect Kenyans to turn out. Kenyans with the election, I don't think their people will want to sleep. This is a very contested election. And we expect Kenyans to go out there and vote. Once they have voted, then the result, we expect them now, the IBC, to process them as expected. So the responsibility of Kenyans is to actually vote. After voting, to ensure and check through that his vote has really counted. So, you know, it's very unfortunate.
So what will Linde Kura?
What will Linde Kura? But not by going to frog match the ABC officials. You think your voters, there are processes for that.
Let me cut you short so that we head straight to Bomas of Kenya, where Brian Kimani is on standby. Let's get a feeling also about the nerve center of this election. And by the way, it is very important for me to note that, of course, as media prepares to tally, KBC has been prepared more than ever, and we'll be tallying these results. I don't want to tell you a secret. But we'll be tallying the vote and, of course, telling it to you. But for now, let's go to Bomas, Brian.
On split. On air, action.
Well, thank you very much, John Jacob Kuria and Victor Olo in Broadcasting House. It's true, we are live from Bomas of Kenya. This is the designated National Tallying Center where IBC has pitched tent to ensure that the delivery of the 2022 general election goes smoothly. I mean, this has been the tradition in the last 10 years. Remember, we started here in 2013. 2017, we were back here again. And of course, now here we are again as Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. I mean, we have put in place elaborate measures to ensure that we give you unrivaled coverage. My name is O'Brien Kimania. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's a cold morning here at the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. And of course, we are here trying to collect as much information and have, fruitful conversations as we go to the polls. That is next week. That is less than 72 hours from now, and more than 20 million Kenyans are expected to the polls to choose their leaders who are going to shepherd them for the next 5 years. And our reporter Serafina Roby is also with me here, and she'll be taking us through the preparations that are taking place here in the last 1 week. It has been a beehive of activity as various political parties agents come here to ensure that there is proper representation. We have also seen the IEBC, or the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission officers, zooming in and out of this place to ensure that all the systems have been put in place. The chairman, Wafula Chebukati, together with the vice chairman, the vice chairperson, as well as other commissioners, they have been here the whole day throughout this week, and of course briefing the media on new development. Today is expected not to be different from that, because in the afternoon we are expecting to hear from the Wafula Chebukati-led IEBC on what preparations they have put in place to ensure that the election is smooth and ensure that it is free and it's fair. That's a conversation we are having here, and of course we'll be crisscrossing to various parts of the country. Remember, the major political candidates are pitching camps in different parts of the country. Today, Azimio la Umoja will be pitching or making their final pitch at the Kasarani Stadium. The Kenya Kwanza team is at Nyayo Stadium. Will be crisscrossing to find out what exactly they are saying as they make their final pitch. Today is the last day for politicians to make their final pitch politically, and of course convince their supporters why they deserve that vote. I have a team of experts with me here at the Bomas of Kenya. Isabel Gethinji is a lawyer and business woman joining us here at the Bomas of Kenya. Thank you very much, Isabel, for your time, and of course for creating time this cold morning here at the Bomas of Kenya. And next to Isabel is Dr. Charles Mbogwa. He is an organizational leadership expert, also joining us here at the Bomas of Kenya. Thank you very much indeed, Bogwa, for your time. I want first of all to hear from you, Isabel Gethinji. I know you've been following up on what's been happening within the Kenyan political space.
Yes.
Have we conducted ourselves, politically in a manner that would be said to be proper?
Oh yes. I believe that we have come a long way, and this particular campaign season has shown a lot of maturity. We have had two very distinct camps, and of course we have 4 presidential candidates, but we have not seen tearing into each other. I think this is possibly the first election where we have actually had issue-based campaigns away from personalities. Of course, personalities play a role, but this particular season we have had issue-based campaigns where Kenyans have had to now look at specific issues that have been brought before them, including stuff to deal with hyenas, all manner of issues. It's been a different campaign season, and I think that we have done very well as Kenyans. Yes.
So your verdict is that you would assign Kenya a performance of good?
Oh yes, we have done very well. Yes.
Daktari, what about you?
Well, as my colleague Isabel has said, we've come a long way. When we reflect backwards, we've had issues as we ran our campaigns in the past. And some of them have been issues where government would be accused of playing partisan roles. Indeed, in some perspectives, of unleashing what would be termed as violence on the very electorate, and in particular the politicians. And we know very well where we've come from. So when we look then at the fact that we promulgated our constitution just a few years back, we are then able to see the growth, the quality of democratic political processes as far as our current behaviors is concerned. Not forgetting that we've also seen the growth of coalitions, and that to a certain extent then, these coalitions have enhanced the process of making sure that the hygiene of our politics is bettered. But of course not without a blot here and there, because again in some of the situations where we have had some of the debates, as it were in the presidential debate, you're able to see in one way or the other tearing into personalities instead of focusing critically on what would be termed as the questions at the table. But to a large extent, we have done well, and we need to appreciate the fact that we have shown credible improvement.
I mean, and you know, something else that has to be said, and Isabel has managed to bring that on the table, is the fact that you know, for the first time, the issues that affect Kenyans, you know, on a daily basis, have managed to be thrust into the limelight. And we are talking about issues like the economy. I mean, the conversation this time around has been the economy, the social welfare of Kenyans, the health sector, education. What do you make of that as an organizational leadership expert?
One of the key things, as Isabel put across, is that component of issue-based politics. In tandem with our Vision 2030, the political pillar envisaged and therefore brought out the aspirations of Kenyans to have issue-based politics. So what have we brought on board that is credible? The fact that across each and every coalition, so to call them, we have got critical issues that have been focused on. For example, the economy. And by looking at the economy, it was not just a catchphrase, economy. They brought out ways in which we can revamp the economy, because we have seen increase in the cost of living. And when we have got the basic needs not met, food being one of them, then that is a recipe for chaos. So addressing it in diverse ways, but all of them sharing in that particular component, that is core. We've also seen a critical component of national continuity from a leadership perspective, corruption. And we know pretty well that corruption in many ways has bedeviled this country. And that's why some of the coalitions have even pointed out that this is who we are. Others have said we aren't corrupt, but we are being called corrupt. And so there has been a line on corruption to a point whereby O'Brien and Isabel, the pollsters, have captured that line of corruption in terms of what do you see as the player within the presidential candidate who is targeting corruption. So that's an issue. And it's not about targeting an individual. It's about knowing that you endanger generations to come when a nation's national assets cannot be managed in a credible way. Then, of course, the gendered perspective of approaching politics and the gendered perspective of making sure that we bring all on board from a perspective of men and women. And that's why when you look at Azimio ya kina mama, you'll hear somebody or a one coalition talking of Azimio la kina mama, where you are now talking of saying there are women who are vulnerable. And when women are vulnerable, then so are their families. And a nation that cannot deal with vulnerability then is not addressing what would be termed as national well-being. And of course, there are many other issues that we bring on board, but I'm happy that critical issues call to intergenerational continuity and the pride of a nation and patriotism have been brought to the table.
Very well put, and I very much, concerned about the cost of living in this country, and it's just not in Kenya that where we're having challenges with the cost of living. I mean, look at the UK. I mean, the inflation rate, has gone up the highest, in about 40 years. Look at the United States. The Joe Biden administration is also battling with the same. Look at South Africa. All over the world, this is a challenge that we're having. But Isabel, I want to hear from you. When you listen to all the presidential candidates, launching their manifestos, are you convinced that the issues of economy have been well elaborated and captured in their documents, in their manifestos?
I think the greatest gainers in this campaign season and the promises that will be for the government that is being formed by whichever side is women and the youth. And they form the base of our population. Whereas before, women and youth were being brought on board through affirmative action. But the campaigns this season and the promises that are by any government that will come into formation is that they'll be the greatest gainers. There's a lot of campaign that is based on how to empower women and how to empower the youth. And empowerment then speaks to the issue of job creation and also empowerment in terms of their business aspect, so that as we go forward, then we are going into a working nation, but not endless work, toil that has no reward. You have had people speak into so much money being put, like 1B, being put into revolving funds, for the women, for the youth. All sides are promising that there's going to be funds that is going to empower those two sectors, but also to speak to the issue of industrialization, which has been brought on board as one of the key areas in which we are going to unlock our economy, in the sense that we have a lot of raw materials in this country which have been laying untapped. And this is what we are also hearing, that the promises are that then now we will begin to open up our own raw materials, so that is going into mining, then going into processing, then going into industrial revolution. So that again, if we go on that path, I believe we are coming to a time in Kenya where we are not only going to speak about wealth, now away from jobs, but now we're going to speak into a wealthy nation, but also a nation that is going to begin to import labor, because we will have enough industries and will not be able to meet the demands, and we are going to begin to import labor into this country. We'll have employed all our own and now start importing.
And you're bringing in the issue of unemployment in this country.
Yes.
And with an employment rate hovering around 17% of the Kenyan employable population, it's significantly higher among the young people. The numbers vary from 40 to 48%. Have we had concrete steps that will be put into place to ensure that we bring these catastrophic numbers down, Dr. Mbogwa?
Thank you very much, O'Brien, and thank you, Isabel, again, because you're talking about wealth creation, and that again is within the overarching Vision 2030. Now, within the various coalitions that we do have, there is a definite, deliberate attempt at making sure that then we fight that high level of what would be termed as unemployment. A good example is that particular component where all of them are talking about manufacturing. And O'Brien, what this is calling on is a continuation of the Big Four agenda, because you find that when we talk about affordable housing, for us to bring on board the thousands of units that we are talking about, that is instantaneous employment. When we talk about skilling of the youth, then it means we can actually capture skills that are not just needed in Kenya, but skills that can be exported. Australia is a good example. So is New Zealand, where plumbing is in great demand. And the same case applies to a skill like that of electricians.
Yeah.
And Kenya is pretty good when it comes to TVET education.
Yeah.
So then if you go deeper to what we are calling that component of manufacturing, it means that we'll be able to come up with machinery. And for us to assemble our machinery, to assemble the motorbikes that our boarders are using, even as we scale to higher levels, then we are increasing what would be termed as the probabilities of decreasing. And I'm talking of probabilities, not possibilities. Because these are things that we can work out empirically. That if we do this and increase the components of manufacturing, then we go further. And then there is a very innovative one, where we are saying each county is endowed in one way or the other. So if then we optimize on exploiting the strength of a county, it means that intra-county source of employment certainly goes up. And within our time, we can have inter-county export of the same kind of labor, because we pull them up, and particularly when they are certified. Let me give you a good example. Dwake Dam has costed billions of dollars. But look at...
Well, not billions of dollars, but billions of shillings.
Billions of shillings.
Yeah.
If you may call it so.
Yeah.
If you look at the first lot that was employed, that's about 2,000 young men. Look at the skills they have learned. Once you certify them, and all the coalitions are able to do that, then it means you have given them a certification. So that tomorrow, when the same is being done in DRC Congo, then we have Kenyans who can be called, not because they are so highly learned in terms of degrees, where we got too much fixated on, but because they have skills that
technical
Africa
skills
requires. Does this resonate with any particular strategy that is global? Yes. Going to Africa, we have got the Agenda 2063. It is looking towards making Africa to have the largest population of human resource from the youth group. So Kenyans then, if they listen carefully to these coalitions, away from what would be termed as the noises of the campaigns, there is a lot that we can get, and whoever wins can run away with it, because it doesn't mean that because this is from coalition B, I cannot bring it to my table. It is part and parcel of the Kenyan inclusivity in participation to driving the nation forward.
And the fact of the matter is, I mean, when you go through the manifestos of all these political parties, I mean, you can definitely pick something that is going to embolden or enrich, the manifesto of candidate B. And we know for sure that not all the 4 candidates will be, voted in. Definitely, there must be one winner.
Very true.
So, Isabel, how do we ensure that, the expertise of candidate A, who was not elected, of candidate B, who never clinched the position, is amalgamated to ensure that as a country we move forward?
First of all, the fact that most of, the 2 front runners are coalitions. That means already that, for example, in the Azimio la Umoja, you can imagine those are 24, 26 aspirations put together in one category, and in Kenya Kwanza, I think maybe 11, if I'm not wrong, aspirations put together. So already that is very rich in terms of capturing the aspirations of the Kenyan people, because all these political parties have membership and following, and then they have sold it to the Kenyan people, and everybody can tell what has been received by the populace as something that they would want to see for themselves. So yes, going forward, I believe that irrespective of which formation is going to form government, they know what are the expectations of the Kenyan people, and they'll be able to capture those even as they continue with their own agenda and manifestos that they'll have sold. But the fact that half of the people will have already signed up to a certain aspiration, then it would only make sense to also carry that on board, so that as you provide leadership, everybody feels included in the government that is in formation. Yes.
I mean, look, when you look at the counties, even at the governors themselves, they have also developed their own manifestos, including members of parliament, and even, funny enough, MCAs. You know, they have also come up with their own mini manifestos of what they are going to do. But the question then comes, I mean, how do we follow through as citizenry to ensure that what was promised was delivered to benefit this country? Dr. Mbogo.
That's a very good one. It is good that we are seeing leadership, because leadership visions, and visions in a manner that brings followers on board. So when it is an MCA within the ward, then that MCA is bringing others on board. Do we have what would be termed as avenues constitutionally towards making sure that tunawajibika? That is a leader, unawajibika we mwenyewe. Number one, we do have our legislative houses. We have got parliament, we have got the county assembly. So we have got the National Assembly, we have got the Senate, and we have got the county assembly. From a county perspective, what the governors have promised has been put down. So one key component towards ensuring that this is achieved is through the oversight role of the county assembly. Of course, they also have got the representation role and the legislative role. So those three roles then are core towards making sure that what was promised is delivered. But remember, there are some who are even, O'Brien, promising security. But they need to realize that they can only deliver directly on what would be defined as the devolved functions. Then when we go to Senate, Senate has got a unique mandate to protect devolution. So when a senator then promises the county that they are going to help increase the funds, the grants that are devolved in tandem with the County Government Act of 2012, then what that senator needs to do is to make sure that if it is the grants, then they are there. And that when we are discussing the allocation to the counties, they bring on board vibrant thought processes in line with the national vision that the coalition will have brought on board. That way, the Senate of Lamu will, for example, make sure that there are enough funds to make sure that agriculture in Lamu becomes a critical source of what we call the own source revenue of a county. That senator then will have to play a more significant role to enhance the own source revenue of the county, which is core in enhancing service delivery among other growth processes of the county. Then for the presidency, they cannot run away from this. The buck stops at both the National Assembly and the Senate in making sure that what the presidency has promised is then achieved.
Is delivered.
The question would be, how qualified are the members of the county assembly? How committed are they to our national values so that truly their heartbeat is representation? The same then must apply to
the National
Assembly and to the Senate. Because if they just go and wine and dine with the powers that be, then another 5 years pass by and we start saying nothing was done. So that component of accountability needs to become a subculture, not just within the county assembly, but also within the individuals, the civil society, the faith-based groups, the professionals, that particular businessman. And that is a gap that this country still has as far as public participation in driving oversight is concerned.
And Isabel, this is where I want you to come through. Dr. was talking about, you know, the political pillar of the Vision 2030. We have been spending, we have spent a few minutes here conversing around the economic pillar of the same. Let's now converse around the social pillar of the Vision 2030, which is also another very critical. We have seen the outgoing administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta being very vigorous, in investing in infrastructure, in industrialization, in housing, in health, in a bid to jumpstart and drive economic growth. And now it is proper to say that we are at a position where we can say now we are ready for takeoff as an economy. Yes. But how do we ensure that the incoming administration build on this legacy to ensure that we drive or we achieve our social pillar as envisaged under Vision 2030?
O'Brien, when you have hunger, for example, when you're hungry, then nothing will stop you until you have your fill. You will do everything that it takes for you to satisfy that hunger. It will call you forth either to go to work or to place a demand, whatever it is, until you are satisfied. Now, Kenya, as you're saying rightly, we are on the runway.
Yeah.
And we must take off. But for us to take off, there has to be that push. I don't know, there's a certain mechanical thing, I don't know what to call it, that pushes even the biggest of crafts so that it gets the momentum. It will then take off by itself, but it has to have that push. And that push for us is the citizenry that is right behind. We are a hungry lot, we are unemployed, we have children we are educating, we have all the demands that we have on this government. And that by itself is enough to keep this nation on focus and on course, because you cannot lead a hungry nation. They will be on you. We have had the Unga revolution before. Right now we have had the revolution on saying the Unga price is very high, the cost of living is very high, and the government has had to intervene. Cost of fuel is very high. When you have a people that are hungry, when a people have a need, when a people have a demand on you, then you have no time to, I feel that whichever government is coming to govern, from day one, they will not have the luxury of celebrations, because already they are coming to a population that is geared to have results now, because they are hungry today. Our children need education today. We need leadership today. So irrespective of who is coming, there's not going to be party after party. I believe it is work. The people are ready to work. They are ready to see results. But then we must, as a nation, just decide that there's work before us before there's going to be a gain. Yes.
Dr. Ari, Isabel has put it very clearly. I mean, that, the incoming administration, there is no time to party. It is time to hit the ground running. Then, so the incoming administration, how do they build, or how do they ensure that in business there's something that we call the return on investment? Look, the Uhuru Kenyatta administration has been very aggressive in expanding our ports, the port of Mombasa, the port of Kisumu. We have also been keen in revamping our railway system, our road system. Right now we have SGR, we have the commuter rail system, we have the railway from Nairobi to Kisumu, from Nairobi to Nanyuki. So the incoming administration, how do they build on that legacy to ensure that as a country we manage to reap what we call returns on investment?
A superb question. The social pillar is core, and when you look at the economic pillar which laid that infrastructure, then we are able actually to continue. Just to allude to the fact that the Big Four agenda was integrated into the medium-term plan 3, 2018 to 2022, so that we capture it very well on continuity and return on investment. The intended budget was 2.8 trillion for the Big Four agenda. 2018-2019, the first tranche was given, it was 400 billion. 2019-2020, the second one was 450.3 billion Kenya shillings. Then COVID came calling, and so for 2020-2021, we only had about 120 billion that went to the Big Four. So therefore, there was that kind of a bit whereby there was a halt on that. Otherwise, that would have continued, and we would be having these projects ready for them to start maturing to give us returns on investment. But are there mega projects that are giving us that? One, the Lamu port is part of the Lapset corridor, a unique corridor. This Lamu port has already brought to Kenya 11 ships. It is a transshipment.
Yeah.
It is meant that is the calculated percentage input to the GDP of 3% annually. That is a return on the investment on the Lamu port. So with a bigger intake, then we are able to move. But we cannot have returns on investments without safe, secure environment. So it means that for us to optimize on what would be termed as the LAPSET, return on investment, then we must be in a position to make sure, courtesy of the threats that have been there.
Yeah.
And the government of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has invested heavily on the security component of the social pillar, to a point whereby now we have a corridor that is on the move. So that's one key bit of making sure that you are able to do that. Number two will take us to the first item we discussed. We cannot have returns on investment when the corruption, prevalence, and perception indices of Kenya are so high. So the government of the day must come up with clear-cut, value-based models which bring each and every one of us on board on how we fight graft. Because you cannot have ROIs of any caliber in a nation when they are being pilfered into people's pockets. And so that becomes another very important part. Number three is asking ourselves then, how are we doing trade with the neighboring countries? Because that infrastructure is very, very important. A good example is that at the ICD Naivasha, we now have a foreign investor who is now optimizing on the ICD to manufacture tiles that will be exported out of Kenya. That gives us a return on investment. How? Number one, it is locals who are being skilled.
Yeah.
We are using local material. When we export, what are we getting? We are boosting our foreign exchange reserves. When we do that, we cushion our inflationary rates. And once we do so, then it means we attract other foreign direct investments into the country. When we have FDIs, then the cost of getting a shilling to invest goes down. So we are creating a very vibrant, competitive business environment as a return on investment, not necessarily in regards to what we shall get from the project itself. Those are among the perspectives that we shall benefit from what Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta's government did.
Isabel, coming back to you, you know, Daktari has talked about the COVID-19, and one of the challenges that is that the incoming administration is going to face is, of course, ensuring that as a country we go back to our normal economic growth path. We know we have been disrupted by COVID-19, where economic growth, you know, tanked. We have also seen the geopolitics of the global geopolitics also playing into things right now. There is a severe global food crisis. There is also severe fuel crisis that is facing the world, and all these are having an impact on Kenya's economy. So what do you feel that the incoming administration ought to do to ensure that we cushion Kenyans, we cushion our economy, and of course we go back to our economic growth path?
I think what Kenyans picked from COVID, you know, was self-sufficiency. I think that was the biggest lesson by all Kenyans through the COVID experience. Self-sufficiency in terms of drugs. That even our pharmaceuticals, we must grow that industry to an extent that we have our labs and we have our systems that are able to actually generate drugs for our nation. Because had COVID hit even how we had seen it initially in the other countries, I don't think there was enough time for us to wait for the jobs and all that to come from those nations, the vaccines, and riches would have died except for God, you know. So that is one area which we realized that out of COVID, first of all, we must boost our pharmaceuticals. That means even as we go into industrial revolution, because that is where we are going, we have to look at medicine, pharmaceuticals, and all that as an area of trade that we must look into, even so that we are able to become sufficient as a country and also to our neighborhood. Because as Dr. here is speaking to the issue of infrastructure, our infrastructure must work for us in the way in which we export. You know, it cannot only be incoming, it must also be outgoing. So that balance will be by way of pharmaceuticals towards our neighbors. Then it goes to the element of food. We can no longer continue to bank on rain-fed agriculture. Even the way the global weather is going, we have realized, and hence the issue of dams, that we have to find a way in which we can continue producing for ourselves. One time I had a big order for beans, and I got to the realization that in this country, we do not have enough beans to feed ourselves. Our ndengus, our kamandes, all those legumes come from our neighboring countries. Uganda and Tanzania are feeding us even with common ndengus and beans. Even with maize? We are down. Maize. And this is our staple food. If you're not eating beans today, you're eating githeri tomorrow. You know, we in this element. And the fact that we cannot even feed ourselves on such common things, rice, you know, wheat, because we didn't realize that we don't have enough wheat production here until Ukraine and Russia happened. And we said, you mean we don't have enough wheat in this country? So we have to... we can grow wheat in Narok, we can also grow wheat in... Yes, so we have too much work ahead of us to feed ourselves. And the essential services. When COVID happened, that's the other thing that people realized, oh, you mean my business one day can just shut and that is the end of it, because it's not falling under essential services. Yet clothing is a big deal in this country, I mean in any country. But what happened when COVID happened is that there was a ban on importation of mitumba, and all that sector went under, you know. Then people started now trading in new clothing and new shoes. And so we realized, and that is what is informing one of the coalitions speaking to the issue of textiles and manufacturing of shoes and clothing. Why? Because we have to find a way in which we are able to clothe ourselves as a nation, even if all other nations shut on us. So we have to go into cotton farming, we have to go into the ginneries and all that, so that, and it's also going to open up a fashion industry. You know, I mean, there's no telling when we start where we can go. It's going to open very many aspects of our trade. So once we apply ourselves to it, whatever area we choose to go to. The other day I was speaking to the issue of avocado farming. We have taken avocado as a seed, as a fruit that can help us. But I ask myself, take the journey of an avocado, take it away from the Kenyan journey, because the Kenyan journey is from farm to plate, and it ends there. But when we export that avocado, say, to another country, they take it from farm to factory. And many things happen to that avocado in the factory. From the seeds, they make medicines for arthritis, I don't know what, anti-inflammatory issues from the seed. And then from the fruit, we have oils for beauty, for hair, for all that. And then now from the skin and all that. And then finally there's manure, you know. So if we just open up ourselves and apply ourselves to everything, to berries, to everything, we'll realize that, by the way, we can't do enough in this country. There's so much to be done. There's many ways in which we can apply ourselves. We just have to take the box and throw it away and start again. And think without the box. I mean, you're listening to this very enriching conversation live from the Bomas of Kenya. Just right behind me here is the National Tallying Center, or what you call the auditorium at the Bomas of Kenya. This is where the announcement of the presidential winner is going to happen by the IBC chair, Wafula Chebukati.
And we are keeping our eyes here, and definitely starting tomorrow, that is on Sunday, this is going to be a very, very busy place. Of course, the whole week it has been busy with observers coming to ensure that, everything in place. IEBC officials working to ensure that every nook and cranny has been tightened, and we ensure that the process is smooth, and of course every detail has been put in place. We shall be linking up with our reporter Sarafina Robi, who is also with me here at the Bomas of Kenya. She's going to take us around some of the areas and what is being set up. Already the media houses are here, both international as well as local, and that's why we as a state broadcaster KBC, we are already here and we are doing this live broadcast. We are also on the set with Isabel Gethinji, who is a lawyer come businesswoman based here in Nairobi, and Dr. Charles Mbogua, who is an organizational leadership expert. We are looking at what awaits the incoming administration, and today being the final day for politicians, to make their final pitch, what should we expect going forward? That's a conversation we are having here. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, and of course at KBC is our Twitter handle. You can always get to us and pass through your question. And I want now to go to Dr. Charles Mbogua. Today being the last day that we expect politicians, to make their political pitch, we know Azimio La Umoja is at the Kasarani Stadium. Then we know Kenya Kwanza is at the Nyayo Stadium. I know Mwaura Wahiga is in Eastleigh. What would you expect them to tell people?
A good one. Each one of them will certainly appeal, even emotionally, in a big way, to their followers to come out in large numbers, to use whatever methods, certainly ethical, to make sure that even those who may be having challenges of maybe reaching the polling stations are out. But over and above that, I do expect them to undertake some bit of campaigning, where they will be summing up what would be termed as their party or coalition manifestos. And in particular, those particular objectives, goals that address majority of those who come out to vote. So certainly there will be a focus on youth. There will be a focus on women. And we have got a new trend as far as the country is concerned. About 60% of our duly registered voters are 35 years and above. And so we have got a lesser number of what would be termed as youth. So they will also be in a position to reach out to that bigger number of that particular block of voters.
Very good.
And of course I would expect, because we would like to have what would be termed as peaceful elections, I would expect each and every presidential candidate, or even any speaker in those rallies, to give a clarion call towards peaceful approach towards this very important democratic
very good
event.
Time now for us to link up with Sarafina Robi. She's going to give us an update on the kind of preparations that are taking place here at the Bomas of Kenya as Kenyans head to the polls in about 3 days from now. I'm being informed that she's still getting ready with that link, and so once we are ready with that link, we'll definitely go to Sarafina Robi. But I want to come back to you, Isabel. Dr. is talking about, politicians appealing emotionally, to their voters to vote for us. Or to vote for them. Do you agree with him, or do you believe they are going to have a different message?
Of course, the message is the same. First of all, I know that they must speak to the message of peace. At the end of these elections, we have one nation, and we're going to be one people. And I've kept on saying that voters never lose. leaders who have positioned themselves for leadership. Some will be confirmed, others will be, postponed. However, for the voter, the person who wins immediately must engage in working for them, so the voters never lose. So that is a message that will have to be given to the voter. Again, taking from where Dr. has said that majority of the voter is above 35 years of age, it speaks to the fact that these are people with young families. These are people who want to hear what the government policy is on education, because they are raising children, they are educating children. They want to hear what is the medical care facility going to look like in terms of just medical cover. What is that going to look like? For the aged people, they also want to know what medical covers are available for them. They want to know what is the welfare for the aged persons as well. So the message changes with the population that is voting. So the young people, they want to know how are they going to be engaged in terms of wealth creation. And I want us to move from job creation to wealth creation, because that is what our aspiration should be. And then now for the young families, they want to know what is in it for them, and also in terms of savings as a country, and also for the elderly people. Again, at the end of the day, I know that what cuts across all sectors and what is going to be a setback for all our aspirations is the element of corruption. So again, they have to speak to that issue, because no matter how good we have plans, if we don't look at what has been constantly ailing us, then it means we are still going to go back to a place where we have good plans, but we have failed to plan on how to achieve that, because we don't have a plan on how to completely eradicate corruption in this country.
Very good. In the interest of time, Daktari and Isabel, we must bring this conversation to a close now, but definitely it's not the last time that we are doing this. We are camping here, and of course we shall be utilizing your expertise and your knowledge on these issues. Otherwise, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Very good. I mean, if you are just hearing, planes buzzing by, don't get worried, because we are at the Bomas of Kenya. This is indeed a flight path to Wilson Airport, and so you're likely to hear a lot of airplanes buzzing around here. But hey, don't worry. We are camping here, and we are here for the long haul. We are giving you live coverage of events as they happen here at the National Tallying Center here at the Bomas of Kenya. This is what we have been doing. We are the first to do this for your information, and of course we're going to ensure that we give you this kind of coverage until the end of this process. My name is O'Brien Kim, and I want to take you back to Broadcasting House. Hey, don't forget I had told you about Sarafina Robi. She's here with us, and she's still trying to walk around to ensure that she has enough content to feed you with. So don't worry. She will be coming up later on today, because remember, we're here until the end of the day, until the end of the process. Back to you, John Jacob Kyoria in Broadcasting House, and Victor Olo.
Bila shaka hujambo, tunakujia moja kwa moja mtazamaji kutoka kwenye ukumbi wa Bomas, ambapo ni kitovu cha tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka, yani IEBC, ambapo mtazamaji hapa ndio mwenyekiti wa tume hiyo huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka Wafula Chebukati atakuwa anatujuza tu jinsi ambavyo uchaguzi mkuu utakavyokuwa ukipeperushwa katika kila pembe ya taifa. Mtazamaji, kufikia sasa tumekita kambi tu hapa kwenye ukumbi huu, na kama unavyoweza kuona kwenye hizi picha ni kuwa mtazamaji, wanahabari kutoka vyombo vya habari vya hapa nchini na vile vya ughaibuni tayari washafika, na kama mwenzangu anavyoweza kuonyesha ni kuwa unaweza ukaona ni baadhi tu ya magari ambayo hutumika katika kupeperusha matangazo ya vyombo vya habari tofauti, na hapa nyuma yangu vile mtazamaji uweze kaona kuwa wameza kuwekeza tu mahema ambayo pia yataweza kutumika katika kupeperusha matangazo ya uchaguzi wa mwaka 2022 ambao utakuwa ni tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8 mwaka 2022. Lakini cha msingi kabisa mtazamaji ni kuwa hapa nyuma yangu vile vile ni hema letu la KBC, ambapo tayari sisi tushaanza shughuli nzima ya kukujuza wewe kinachoendelea hapa katika ukumbi wa Bomas, kwani mtazamaji mwenzangu Bran Kimani alikuwa hapo na ufafanuzi wa changanuzi wa masuala ya kisiasa, ambapo mtazamaji amekuwa tu akichanganua jinsi ambavyo matayarisho yamekuwa yakiendeshwa na Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka ya IEBC. Na vile vile mtazamaji wameweza kuchanganua jinsi ambavyo wagombeaji mbalimbali wamekuwa wakifanya manifesto yao, na vile vile jinsi ambavyo wamekuwa wakifafanua, wakiwaelekeza ama wakiwaelezea Wakenya kuhusiana na manifesto zao. Vile vile mtazamaji, leo ni siku muhimu sana kulingana na kanuni na ratibu za Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka ya IEBC, kwani leo ndio siku ya mwisho ya kampeni kwa wagombeaji ambao wanagombea viti mbalimbali. Na tumeweza kuona kuwa wagombeaji wa mirengo mbalimbali haswa ile ya kirais watakuwa wanafanya makongamano ama hizo rally katika kumbi mbalimbali. Moja wapo itakuwa ni kule Kasarani, nyingine itakuwa ni kule Nyayo, na vile vile mtazamaji ni kuwa KBC ipo katika kumbi hizo zote kuhakikisha kuwa unaweza kupata matangazo hayo mbashara kabisa. Lakini kikuu sana ni hapa katika ukumbi huu wa Bomas, ambapo tutakuwa tunajumuika na mwenyekiti wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka Wafula Chebukati pamoja na makamishna wengine wa tume hii ya IEBC waweze tu kutujuza kufikia sasa matayarisho yamefikia wapi mtazamaji, kwani ikilinganisha kwa matayarisho haya hajaanza hivi sasa, yameanza tangu mwaka jana, mwaka wa kifedha mwaka 2021 mwaka 2022, ambapo Wizara ya Fedha mtazamaji iliweza kutenga takriban shilingi bilioni 22.9 kwa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka, na vile vile kwa mwaka wa kifedha wa 2022 mwaka 2023 vile vile wakaweza kuongezewa takriban shilingi bilioni 21.7. Hivyo basi jumla ya hela hizo yafikia takriban shilingi bilioni 44.6 ikilinganishwa na mwaka uliopita, mwaka wa uchaguzi wa mwaka 2017. Tume hii iliweza kupewa takriban shilingi bilioni 49, ambapo mwaka wa kifedha 2016-17 aliweza kupewa takriban shilingi bilioni 27. Baadaye wakaweza kuongezewa takriban shilingi bilioni 22 ambazo waliweza kutumia katika kufanya maandalizi ya uchaguzi wa mwaka uliopita, na kwa sasa kwa mwaka huu tumeweza kuona kuwa ni takriban bilioni 44 mtazamaji nukta 6. Vile vile mtazamaji, ukilinganisha jinsi ambavyo watu wameweza kujisajili kujitayarisha katika uchaguzi huu ambao utafanyika tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8 ambapo ni siku ya Ijumaa, ni kwa watu ambao wameweza kujisajili kuweza kupiga kura ni takriban watu milioni 200,120,458, ambapo mtazamaji kaunti ambayo inaongoza kwa wasajili wengi kabisa ni kaunti ya Nairobi, ambapo watu ambao waliweza kujisajili ni watu takriban milioni 2,415,310, kifuatiwa kwa karibu kabisa mtazamaji na kaunti ya Kiambu, ambapo watu ambao waliweza kujisajili ni takriban watu milioni 1,275,008, alafu ikafuatiwa na Nakuru, Kakamega, Meru, alafu watu ambao wapo pale ughaibuni ambao waliweza kujiandikisha pia ili waweze kupiga kura yao, kwani ni haki yao ya kikatiba waweze kuruhusiwa pia waweze kupiga kura, ambao walikuwa takriban watu 10,433. Alafu pia wapo watu ambao wapo kwenye magereza mtazamaji, pia hao wataweza kuruhusiwa kupiga kura, na watu ambao waliweza kusajiliwa kwa magereza yote ni takriban watu 7,843 mtazamaji, na ikilinganishwa na watu ambao waliweza kusajiliwa mwaka 2017 ni kuwa ongezeko iliweza kuongezeka kwa takriban asilimia 13 mtazamaji. Na vile vile katika uchaguzi huu kulingana na kanuni na ratiba za IEBC, Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC, ni kuwa tunatarajia mtazamaji watu ambao wanagombea ama ambao wataweza kuchaguliwa ni magavana 47, maseneta 47, wawakilishi wa wanawake 47, wabunge 290, wawakilishi wadi 1450 na vile vile rais mmoja ambaye atakuwa na naibu wake. Mtazamaji, vile vile tukiangazia matayarisho ya Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka ambayo tunaendelea kufuatilia hapa katika ukumbi wa Bomas, ni kuwa kufikia hapo jana, kulingana na mawasiliano ambao waliweza kuwapa wanahabari, ni kuwa tayari wameweza kupata zile stakabadhi ambazo ama shehena ambayo ina zile kura za kupiga ambazo watu watatumia kupiga kura. Wameweza kupata shehena ambayo ni wanaita pellets ambayo ni 4443 na tayari wameweza kusambaza 3141, na hivi leo mtazamaji ndipo wanatarajia kuweza kupokea shehena hiyo ya mwisho ama hizo ambazo wanaziita pellets 18 ambazo ni baadhi tu ya ambazo zilikuwa zinatarajiwa hapa nchini, kwani sehemu hizi ni sehemu ambazo zilikuwa na tashwishi mbalimbali kuhusiana na kuidhinishwa kwa wagombea wawakilishi wa wadi wa sehemu mbalimbali, na baada ya wawakilishao kuweza kuidhinishwa, basi pellets hizo ambazo ni shehena zitaweza kuwasili hapa nchini hii leo. Na kulingana na mawasiliano ambayo yaliweza kutolewa hapo jana na mwenyekiti pamoja na makamishna wenzake wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC, ni kuwa kufikia leo shehena zote zitakuwa zimeshawasili hapa nchini, na kufikia hapo kesho mtazamaji zitaweza kusambazwa kwa kila pembe ya nchi ili watu waweze kupiga kura ifikia hapo siku ya Jumanne. Vile vile mtazamaji, hapa tunapoendelea kufuatilia tu mambo yanayoendelea hapa kwenye ukumbi wa Bomas, ni kuwa tumeweza kuona usalama mtazamaji umeweza kuimarishwa kabisa pindi tulivyoingia hapa. Tumeweza kuona wahadhari wa hapa nchini na vile vile wale wa ughaibuni na vile vile wa nchi tofauti hapa barani Afrika wameweza kufika hapa tayari kujiandaa kwa siku hiyo kuu ambayo ni siku ya Jumanne tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8, na vile vile kuna kituo ambacho kimeweza kutengwa na Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka ambapo wanatarajia watakuwa wanaweza kuongea na wanahabari kutujuza tu mawasiliano ya jinsi uchaguzi unavyoendelea kutoka kila pembe ya nchi. Kulingana na takwimu zilizokuwa zimetolewa hapo awali na Tume hii Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka, ni kuwa waliweza kusema takriban mtazamaji wanahabari 1400 waliweza kujiandikisha kusema kuwa watakuwa katika wakifuatilia chaguzi hizi ambazo zinaendelea katika gatuzi 44 zote za nchi hii. Kwa hivyo mtazamaji, tutaendelea kukitaka kambi hapa ambapo tumeweza kuwekeza hema kuhakikisha kuwa tunakujuza wewe kila kinachotokea ama kinachoendelea. Kwako studioni.
Thank you very much, Serafina Robi and the Bomas team. Indeed, as you can see, we pitched tents properly at the Bomas of Kenya to brief you on every happening around there. 22 million voters will come out on Tuesday to vote for their preferred leaders for the next 5 years. And in studio, as well as at the Bomas of Kenya and across all the 290 constituencies, 47 counties, KBC is on standby to give you a brief on what will be happening there. Also, later today, Nancy Okwere and Richard Munga are on standby at Kasarani for the Azimeo La Umoja final and rallying call. And then we also have Beatrice Gatonye and Irene Mchuma who are on standby at the Nyayo National Stadium for the Kenya Kwanza final call. Victor, clearly, as you can see, and for the benefit of our viewers, this is a historic election and we are ready for it.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I think Kenyans are also ready. It's been long coming. We started talking about 2022 5 years ago. Right now we are just counting hours. As we said, it's going to be a busy day here in the capital center, capital city, so to say. And well, let's wait and see how it's going to pan out. One thing which is very much important to say is that the number of registered voters in this particular country this year alone has gone up. And Jen has those numbers just to crunch them for us to make understand what has been the trajectory from 2013, 2017, and 2022, and what are some of the reasons why those numbers went up. Jen, what do you have?
Now, before we actually look at the over 22 million registered voters that are in 22, let us go back to 2013. We're looking at the total registered voters, and mind you, these are verified figures from the IEBC themselves, looking at the number of registered voters, it stood at 13,979,628 registered voters. Let's quickly jump to 2017 to just compare how this number has gone up. This here is now the figure for 2017. The registered voters stood at 19,605,595. Coming to 2022, this is the latest figure per what IEBC has, standing at 22,102,532. Now, when you compare this figure of 22 million from that of 2013 that stood at 13.9 million, the total number of voters has grown by 8,122,904. Total growth over the span of 10 years to get to where we are today. And now, just looking from these numbers, it clearly shows that, of course, people are interested when it comes to these elections. But maybe, Kyria, we could look at some of these factors that have encouraged this growth over the years, almost 10 million in a span of 10 years. Kyria.
It's very interesting, and looking at those numbers, and Wakili, because you hear. What do you credit this increase, particularly one on the registered number of voters? First of all, you have like about 3 million, but still the IEBC complains people didn't come out in the way they should to register as voters. And we'll also talk about spoiled votes also.
It's natural that as a country, Kenyans, we expect the population to go up, and as the population goes up, we expect the numbers to also go up. It's also like education system. Every year we've been recording increased numbers of students who register. These people are the people who go out and become citizens, and they are expected to vote, so the numbers go up. The IBC has got a right to complain because you look at the register of the national government of the number of young people are supposed to be having vis-a-vis what you have, you realize there's a disparity. Then you got to complain. You wonder whether Kenyans are not patriotic enough, or is it the IBC itself who has not done proper sensitization. There is among the young people, there is that aspect of where should we vote? These things already seem like they've already been decided, or there's the aspect of people losing hope that, you know, here in our economic situation, nobody seems to be giving a proper way out. So it's as good as not voting, because there's no need to legitimize this election with my vote, because these people are all the same. You know, there are those aspects which make people not to also go out and take vote as cards so that they want to vote.
All right.
So
before we hand it back to Jen, because what the figures she has there, you have the registered number of voters versus the valid number of voters. But that is as far as valid goes, which takes me back to 2017, the contestation over spoiled votes. And you will remember in 2017, I think there were more than 500,000 spoiled votes. In this election, whether the IEBC has been able to address the problem of spoiled votes and what impact it will have at the end of the day on the percentage each of a presidential candidate gets.
I think, first of all, let me start on the part of the role of IEBC. The role of IEBC is to sensitize people on how to do proper voting. So most of these voting anomalies, especially on the spoiled votes, is because they have not been very clear. They have not been very clear on the ground at the polling stations, or people are not properly guided on how to vote. Or, you know, Kenyans, you can't also miss to get a couple of people who are just mischievous. They just show up at the then decide to do their own things in there, even with very clear knowledge of what they are expected. So just a kind of protest. But those ones are very minimal. But I think the major thing, if somebody has woken up to go to a polling station, is to vote and vote correctly. So it's only that maybe he's not been given the correct information on how to vote. That's why we end up having the spoiled vote. The 2017 election, we had a very big challenge, as you have noted out, that there were around 500,000 spoiled votes. And, you know, at the Supreme Court, that became a big issue when a question was asked, How do we assess to whom do we put these, or how do you count them? Do you count them as voters? Do you count them as in the final tally? Where do you put them? That became a challenging question, and I think IBC has not come out so clear to tell us exactly how they're going to treat that.
But it has an effect on the percentage.
It has an effect on the percentage, because if you have 500,000 and these people showed up, the details were taken, and they were the polling station, so they should count as people who were the polling station. Only that the final tally of the election votes, which is going to be accredited to a specific candidate, they will be missing out.
All right.
But the percentage will be different.
And I think, Jane, what you have there as regards valid, it appears like the IEBC does not factor in the spoiled votes. It just talks about the valid votes. This is the total number of registered voters. The turnout is something else, but these are the valid votes, and that is what you have up on your screen, Jane.
Yes, and it's interesting that you bring up this question of what is valid, because the question still remains, is it contributing to this difference in the number of registered voters? Because again, looking at 2013, the number of registered voters was over 13 million. In 2017, it grew by almost 6 million. But when you look at 2017 to 2022, it has only grown by a little over 2 million. You can see it's half what they registered between 2013 and 2017. And now we're looking going back to those votes that are considered to be valid. In 2013, it was at 12,221,000. When you compare those that were registered and those that were considered valid, there's a difference of about 1,758,575 votes. That was in 2013. Now, when you come to 2017, looking at the number of registered voters versus what was considered to be valid, which stood at 15 million, the difference is 4.4 million votes. So what's the criteria that they use to define what is valid or what is invalid? Again, going to civic education, and now looking at this trajectory from 1 million to now 4 million begs the question for what will be the figure in 2022.
Yeah, that's the big question. But obviously, like Wakili pointed out, the increase in terms of registered voters also occasions an increase in the next election as regards the number of people who will come out to vote. Because, like you say, except this year when we have seen not a big increase in the register, in other elections you have experienced such quite a good number of people coming out to register. But Joy Mdiva, looks like the electorate is giving up on the electoral process, in the sense that when you have one register going up by about 6 million, and then this one is either 3 million or less in terms of the new number of registered voters.
Perhaps before you pick it, Joy, Jen can give us, go back down memory lane. 2013, 2017, and now 2022, the presidential candidates we had way back then. Only Martha Karua has featured somewhere as a presidential candidate. Yeah. Jen?
Now, let's go back to 2013, let's pull up the presidential candidates from 2013. Now, in 2013, there was a total of 7 presidential candidates. And among them, Martha Karua was the only female candidate. Out of the 8, Martha Karua was the only female candidate. And that is the only year that we have had a female presidential candidate through the past 2 general elections that we have had. In 2017, there wasn't any female presidential candidate, but in 2017, we had 8 presidential candidates, okay? 8 presidential candidates right there, all of them being gentlemen. 2022, again, 4 presidential candidates, no female candidate has been cleared so far. But another thing to note, when you look at 2013, all of the presidential candidate was sponsored by political parties. That was in 2013. But when you come to 2017, that's when we had the first independent candidates being fronted by fronting themselves as individual, and we had 3 of them. Out of the 8 that were there, 5 was sponsored by political parties, and
Joseph
only
Nyaga,
3.
That is independent, the late?
Yes, the late Joseph Thiga. He
Exactly.
was vying as an independent candidate. We also had Japheth Kavinga as an independent candidate and Michael Mwaura as independent candidates. But in 2022, there isn't any independent candidate.
Amazing. So, Kiore, probably Wakili can also answer this question, because when you look at the candidates, only Martha Karua has featured somewhere. All of them are male. The 2/3 gender rule is always a hard nut to crack, and probably Joy will also get into it later on. But Wakili, it's still a hard nut to crack as we speak, even in 2022.
I think we can call it as such, because this thing has been on and off. Every time it appears in Parliament where we are supposed to make it right, it just ends up disappearing somehow. Well, of course, people with even the, you know, the most interesting bit is that we have a lot of now women members of Parliament through the numbers of the women reps. You expected to have a better discussion. You expect them that in the intervening period before this debate is brought up the next time, they should have at least coalesced their male counterpart, at least done something, even done a caucus somewhere so that they bring this kind of sensitization. But in one way or another, this has remained to be the one thing that Parliament has failed to solve. So I think we can just call it that that is a very big problem, and maybe we should look at the constitution whether we actually need it, because now we are at a place that is one of the clauses which is a constitutional provision which is supposed to be enforced, which has never been enforced since 2010.
I'm sure Joy will have a lot of things.
And it's good Joy is here to highlight some of the issues.
Proposal to revisit the constitution.
It's not just revisiting the constitution. I mean, look at this panel. It's 4 men against 1 woman, and Jane comes in and helps with the gender card a little bit. So it's something that's not unique to Kenya, unfortunately. This is something that you see across the globe, where you've got women in leadership in different shapes and forms. But in Kenya, what we have chosen to do is to try and start with the affirmative action route, where we start with the women rep seats. Now, those women rep seats have produced women leaders who have, many of them start out as women rep, but by the time they're done, they're actually contesting single member constituency seats. So you find that women leadership is growing. The number of women who vied for competitive election last time, if my numbers serve me correctly, was I think still around 11% of those who are running. But in this year, I think we are 23%. So there's an incremental, increment over there. Last time we had 3 women who were elected as governors. You had Joyce Laboso, you had Waiguru, and you had Ngilu. This time we've got, I think UDA has sponsored 5, and there's a Gladys Wanga in Homa Bay. So there's at least 6 gubernatorial candidates who are coming in. There are many more women who are vying.
But that's not enough yet.
It's not enough, but it's incremental. It's doing better than you're doing with your voters anyway. Because women in leadership is coming to the fore. In terms of electability, the last general election of the women who vied, at least 23% of them went through. And the election percentage actually compared with the men who vied versus the ones who were successful. So I think we are coming to our own in terms of understanding women in leadership. And as a country, okay, so you can make an argument for, do we need the women rep seats? Well, if we're looking, for example, let's look at the Law Society of Kenya. Right now we have a council. Harvey's council had, I think, 4 men and 9 women, if I'm not wrong. Same thing with the Nairobi branch. Nairobi branch now has a chair and a vice chair who are both women. There's not a man in sight. If you look at trends in professional bodies, you realize that women in leadership are coming to a place where we're actually not just competitive, we're actually becoming dominant. And so this...
sorry to cut you short. I would want to understand from you, as an activist, you appear now to favor the incremental route other than the abrupt implementation of that clause. Are you saying incremental is the way to go?
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay.
All I'm saying is, despite the inequalities and the lack of framework or anything, women leadership is still growing. And all I'm saying is also, even if they fail to implement it. And that's what's giving the example of the LSK. We have seen women still rising to the top regardless. And the leadership in the LSK right now is very female heavy, to a point that if we start looking at the 2/3 gender rule when it comes to the LSK leadership, I don't think we're compliant. The men actually need affirmative action. So when we're talking about implementing a law, yes, when you talk about implementing a law to operationalize the 2/3 gender rule, right now it looks like you need it for the women, but women are becoming more empowered, more educated, they're more assertive. Many women now are getting to a place where they're actually learning the ropes. If you look at our women politicians, many of them become repeat politicians. They don't do one stint. All of them become elected again and again. Millie Mabona, Gladys Wanga, if you're looking at Charity Ngilu, even Martha Karua, they don't just go in once, meaning they're when they get the opportunity, they're excellent and exemplary in what they do. That tells me, therefore, that right now, maybe culturally, because of even first off the bat, women leadership has been lagging, but give it our daughter's generation, give it another 10 years, another 15 years, you might be in a place where, by the way, it's the men who are looking for space. So when you talk about gender parity, it's not a women issue. It's actually an issue of creating opportunities for everybody to be able to participate, regardless of demographic.
You talked of men,
demographic.
Men at the LSK need affirmative action, and Wakili there was like, what are you talking about, Joy?
It is true. It is true.
It's okay. Let's talk about, briefly, when you go into the election, there were some questions which were raised. Valid vote, stray votes. We have disputed votes and spoiled. Could you please just break them down?
Let's start with valid vote. Valid vote is the one where...
Because that's exactly what Sol's Jane was talking about from the smart hole there as well.
Yes. Valid vote is the one where has been verified, that was issued by the IBC, so it has a stamp at the back.
Yes.
And it has been correctly marked by the voter and was placed in the correct box.
Good.
So that is a valid vote, because when you look at it, it was issued by the correct IBC, it was marked correctly by the voter, so we can ascertain what the voter was trying to say. So that's a valid vote. A stray vote is the one that is issued by the IBC, so it has a stamp, has been correctly marked by the voter, but was put in the wrong box. Now, once you put your vote in the wrong box, people don't say, oh, this is presidential, put the correct box. No, that becomes a stray ballot.
It's a presidential, but it went to a governor's box.
Yeah, so you put in the governor's box and the women's box. So people don't redirect your vote for you.
Yes.
They just, it's put aside and is counted as a stray ballot. Now, the big elephant in the room, the spoiled votes.
The spoiled votes.
Now, the spoiled votes are very interesting because they affect turnout. So they give you a percentage of turnout because they come out. But because the voter went in, and of all the selections that were given, they were not happy with what they saw. So there's two types of spoiled. There's a spoiled where somebody incorrectly marked it. So he says, oh, I like Joy, I don't like Victor. You've put 2 marks. We cannot ascertain what you meant. Did you mean Victor? Did you mean Joy? That becomes a spoiled vote. But the vast majority of the spoiled votes are for those people who say...
Just a minute. I'm told that Deputy President is speaking, so just hold that thought. We cross over to... the Deputy President,
current residence of the Deputy President,
and take a listen of what he's saying over there. Straight to Karen.
The wrongs. In any case, Vindu Vichenjanga. To do that, we must believe in a better tomorrow. But it is our duty to make that better tomorrow. Let's not surrender to skeptics, those who insist there is nothing wrong. This is the essence of your vote, to choose leaders who will make decisions to better your lives. And the choice is between promise and guarantee. Remember, Kenya Kwanza is your guarantee. Usipoteze wakati huu. Kenyans, we have worked with you on this journey of reflection on how to remodel our country. We have come to you where you live, everywhere in our country. We have listened to you and heard you very, very clearly. We know your hopes, your anxieties, and we also know your fears. We assure you that we are not about to let you down. Sorry. Thank you. You have given us your attention. You have given us your ideas. And you have given us your support. It's time to put a signature to all that contribution by voting for Kenya Kwanza. In the socio-economic forums that we held together, you recounted your pain and reasons why. You told us what you want done to heal your destroyed lives. We have together agreed on the Kenya Women's Charter, the Youth Charter, the Charter for the people living with disability, and charters on education and health sectors, among others. In the education sector, we have agreed to remove the hiccups, and we have agreed on affirmative action for Kenyan women and people living with disability. We have agreed on and signed county economic charters. We have developed an authentic, homegrown Kenya country plan from these charters. We thank the legendary Mama Mboga, boda, shoe shiner, saloonist, farmer, fisherman, hawker, and construction worker for this great achievement. You gave us a template from which we are going to deliver better living for all Kenyans. This is what gives us the confidence that we are together on the wishes and hopes of the majority of the people of Kenya. We have agreed that from day one in office, our work will be, among other things, to tackle the punitive cost of living so that each and every one of us can afford to go about their lives. We have agreed to reduce the cost of doing business so that industry can thrive, opportunity can abound, and opportunity for employment can be a reality. We have agreed to tackle runaway corruption, including state capture, budgeted corruption, and financial wastage. We have agreed that we will guarantee universal health coverage for all Kenyans, where each and one of us will have a cover, and the public hospitals will be stocked, and necessary equipment and medicines will be available. We've agreed that we will arrest the draining public debt through forensic identification of wasteful borrowing for non-essential expenditure, so as to reduce the snowballing high taxation. These measures will provide relief and space for initiation of the Kenya Kwanza Guaranteed Comprehensive Flagship Programs, which among others include the re-engineering of our agricultural production for food security, agro-processing, and manufacturing, including cash crops such as tea, coffee, rice, sugar, macadamia, cashew nuts, pyrethrum, livestock farming, and many other sectors that we discussed with citizens across Kenya when we engaged them in our economic fora. And as I said last night, we reached out to close to 100,000 Kenyans in our economic fora. We will be streamlining support for micro, small, and medium enterprises so that they can have access to credit. We can improve on their incomes. We can create additional jobs, and credit will be available to as many as the 10 million people in the micro and small enterprise space. We will be investing in infrastructure, including labor-intensive infrastructure in housing, both as a stimulus package, economic stimulus package, and for matters of social protection, and making sure that every citizen has access to what the Constitution envisages. We will be rolling out our digital superhighway for the empowerment of every citizen with information, with opportunity, with business opportunity that's available in the information and digital space. Put together, these interventions will bring down the cost of living, eradicate hunger, create job opportunities, expand the tax base, improve foreign exchange balance, and give us inclusive growth. In the Kenya Kwanza plan, we are very clear and deliberate about the implementation schedule. We know what are the quick wins. We know what should be done in the short term. We're very clear about what to do in the medium term. And we are very certain about what to do on the long term. We also know what should not be done. It is because we have this clear plan of action for Kenya that we reiterate our call for and commitment to peaceful, free, and fair elections. We demand that the recent malfeasance in attempts to twist the elections must stop. We want a calm country after elections so that Kenya Kwanza can embark on its plan for Kenyans without any delay. We want to tell the world that Kenya Kwanza, we are committed to a peaceful election. We will not contradict our vow to uphold peace. We ask every supporter of Kenya Kwanza across Kenya to conduct themselves peacefully, to vote peacefully, and wait for the results peacefully. We submit to peace, not because we are shy or fearful, but because we understand the need to have an environment to invigorate our ailing economy that needs all of us to fix immediately after the election. For this reason, we reassure all investors, local and foreign, of protection of their enterprises and businesses. We welcome all the local, regional, and international partners of goodwill to come and assist in reawakening the giant that's the Kenyan economy. Ours is a coalition for change, and we invite you to be part of this change. Our policy is that there is everything for all of us. Kenya is a land of plenty, but only if we can bake the cake together and share it together. Indeed, any interference with the elections or sabotage of elections by rogue state functionaries will be a betrayal of Kenya's right to build a functioning and inclusive economy. It is to overthrow the Kenyan dream for a better and brighter tomorrow. Kenya Kwanza remains hopeful and vigilant and will not be part of any scheme to undermine or to sabotage the election. Let each functional institution offering support to IEBC keep to its lane and leave to IEBC its mandate to conduct elections without any interference or blackmail or intimidation. We believe that IEBC have the capacity to handle this election. We believe that the men and women in the IEBC have what it takes to deliver a free and fair election. All ends should be kept off. We appeal to Kenyans to turn out in large numbers to exercise their right of political participation. We implore you, all Kenyans, to ignore intimidation or coercion or bribery or blackmail, and also ignore the lies. Don't buy into fear. Vote for mabadiliko ya uchumi, kazi ni kazi, na pesa mfukoni. Finally, we are indebted to Kenyans for their kindness. You have stood with us throughout this journey. You welcomed us in your homes, in your villages, in your markets, in your towns, without reservation. Your optimism Good. Finally, let me take that again. Finally, we are indebted to Kenyans for their kindness. You have stood with us throughout this journey. You have welcomed us in your homes, your villages, your markets and towns without reservation. Your optimism kept us going. At some stages, it has been a rough journey, but fulfilling all the same. Victory is beckoning. We also appreciate messages of goodwill from the Kenyan diaspora and international friends of Kenya. We urge you, wherever you are, to use your discretion to prevail against those bent on destabilizing our elections and our country. We are proud partners of Kenya Kwanza. We dearly hold on to our unwavering solidarity. And let me take that again. We dearly hold on to our unwavering solidarity and studious commitment to the ideals we stand for. We are proud to have made this an issue-based election focused on the economy, away from trivialities and personality cults that have characterized our previous elections. Kenyans and Kenya's strategic importance in the region and internationally must be safeguarded by all. This is what has brought us to this age of victory. We pray in the words of our national anthem, "Let one and all arise with hearts both strong and true. Service be our earnest endeavor. And our homeland of Kenya, heritage of splendor, firm may we stand to defend." Kenyans, dear Kenyans, see you on the other side of a victorious Tuesday. God bless you, and God bless our great country, Kenya. Thank you very much. This is our final statement and our final call to the people of Kenya. This is going to be a historic election. In many ways, it's going to be a historic election. This is going to be an election that is going to finally confirm that it is the people who hire and fire governments. The people of Kenya will, in this election, confirm their centrality of place in the Constitution, that it is the people. It is the people is not the system. It is not those in power. It is not the deep state. It is not everything else that we've been told all the years. It is the people. And in this election, the people of Kenya will confirm that it is them, the people of Kenya, ordinary as they may be, simple as they may be, that will hire the next government. We have confidence, we have faith in the people of Kenya. And we are proud that finally we made this election not about leaders, not about changing the constitution, not about positions, not about sharing power, that we made this election about the people, their issues, the empowerment of the people, jobs for ordinary people, businesses for ordinary people. Finally, we are confident we got it right, that Kenya is about the 50+ million Kenyans. It's not about 2, 3, 5, 10 people. It is about the whole lot of us. We are very proud at the verge of this election that finally we have managed to relegate ethnicity to the back burner, to relegate division to the back burner. That today we stand together as the people of Kenya, irrespective of where we come from, irrespective of the spelling of our names, the faiths we profess. Today we stand together as the people of Kenya. And we have overcome the so-called system. We have overcome the so-called deep state. And the people of Kenya today stand tall. And Tuesday is going to be defining. Tuesday is going to be a great day. Kenyans will celebrate because finally they will discover the power of their vote. Thank you very much. I want to ask my brothers and sister who is here to make very brief remarks. If anybody has... We are good. We are good? We are good. So let me leave it there. See you in the rally, and of course see you on the other side. Asante.
Very well. That is the final briefing, press brief by the Deputy President William Ruto at his current residence. He said that Kenyans see you on the other side on Tuesday. That perhaps should call it the last official press briefing by the UDA ahead of the rally that is scheduled to take place at the Nyayo National Stadium. But even as that was happening, we had a discussion here, Joy. Look at that lineup. There's only one woman in that lineup. Something that we've just talked about not too long ago, about gender balance. And it has just played out in our eyes within a short span.
There's a question about giving women the opportunity, and there's also the question of women who are available to take up the opportunity. If you talk to many of the political parties, one of the biggest headaches over the last month or so was those party lists that had to be gender compliant. Yes, you're told you have to fill a certain quota, but do you have enough quality women leaders who have stepped up and offered themselves to take up these positions?
Yes.
And for many of the Secretary Generals, if you spoke with them, they struggled with that. Even people who are looking for deputy governor positions and were mindful to give women. Like you saw the struggle that Kangata had in Muranga. So there is room that has been created by the law for women to take up, but there are not enough competent women leaders to step up and fill those positions. And so you find like an opportunity like this one, you would have expected to have a few more women step up to the plate, but you'd find maybe the women are unavailable, maybe they've gone on the ground, they're doing their campaigns, and so what you end up with is another man-heavy presentation like we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. So Kiore, that is the last press briefing. Moving on, it's going to be a heavily and charged day. What do you think?
And they have several events, obviously culminating to Nyayo National Stadium, at least according to the campaign secretariat of the Deputy President. They're headed to Suswa, there's another meeting, then Nyayo Stadium, and finally Kirigiti in Kiambu County. But because we need to go to church, like literally, Wakili, very quickly, your quick reaction to the press briefing by the Deputy President.
I think we have to give it to the Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto. He's been a very consistent man with this message. And given that he's doing this at the last moment, telling Kenyans, we have been at this game for this long. Now this is my clarion call to all, and Sandri, you cannot be able to attend my rally today. This is what I have to tell you. There is the aspects of people talking about the deep state, talking about the system. Don't worry about those things. We are beyond those things now. We are going to a battle, and this battle we are winning. At the end of the day, we are going to win. I think that's a very charismatic way of doing a final call to all and sundry, to all Kenyans, and given that he's actually in all the stations, so that he reaches to everybody in vernacular stations, in every station, so that that is kind of is culminating his entire campaign and giving his agenda and telling Kenyans, thank you so much for listening to me, for hosting me in your villages, in your homes and everywhere. But now this is where it has come push to shove. Let's vote, let's guard the vote, let's wait, and we are going to emerge victorious.
And of course, the call for peace and saying, calling on his supporters to
which is very important.
Be peaceful and wait for the results. What I liked is, even for the results, wait for them peacefully, and quite interesting, that one. I'm sure in the course of the day also we'll be hearing from the Azimio leader, Raila Odinga, and respective supporters have started streaming in to the respective stadiums. But for now, you have to go to church and then come back later with Kenya Decides. So church first and Kenya Decides later.
Muhimu.
DSI can go to church. Yeah.
Kwa miaka 11 Minto FM imekuwa pamoja nanyi ikiwapa burudani na kuwaelimisha. Na sasa tunawaalika mashabiki wetu tujumuike pamoja kwa tamasha la Minto Night. Tarehe 6 mwezi Agosti tutakuwa na Minto Night huko Winds Park Resort Kisii. Wanamuziki kama vile Kwasa Kwasa, Embarambamba na wengine watakuwa site kuwaburudisha. Siku ya Jumapili tarehe 7 Agosti, Minto FM itaandaa maombi ya shukrani na kuombea uchaguzi wa amani katika uwanja wa Itiero Primary School kuanzia saa 3 asubuhi. Waimbaji wa nyimbo za dini wakiwemo Evangelist Eric Mwaniki, Molly Kemunto na wengineo watakuwemo. Nyote mwalikwa.
Minto FM yenye karuga yusi.
The 2022 Commonwealth Games will be hosted in Birmingham, United Kingdom from the 28th of July through the 8th of August 2022. Team Kenya is set to make its 17th appearance at the Games. Kenya will contest for medals in several disciplines, among them athletics, boxing, hockey, rugby, weightlifting, wheelchair basketball and parasport, among others. Watch the Games live on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
sincere prayer this morning in Jesus' name.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. God is good and all the time. Yes, it's yet another time that we want to worship our God in giving. And we have so many ways of giving in this church. And I think our M-Pesa till number is going to be projected on the screen. And I will request the deacon and the deaconesses to be ready as they wait upon us. And I'm going to read from the book of Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9. Then I will pray. Then after that, the deacons and the deaconesses will wait upon us. And from wherever you are, you can as well join us in worshiping the Lord in giving. Proverbs 3:9 says, honor the Lord with all thy substance and with the first fruit of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty.